Ladies and gentlemen, mesdames, messieurs, welcome back to Meet the Blessed, a show where a Orthodox panel talk show where I introduce some of the greatest minds, influencers, and creators in the Orthoverse and get together to talk about the intersections of Orthodox Christianity, religion, politics, culture, society, all the things. This week, I have with me some of the two men from the apologetics world, and of course, Mr. Matthew Erickson, my brother from another podcast. Gentlemen, we're going to get to introductions in a second, but just a reminder to everyone on the who's watching, please like, subscribe, and share the stream. Let the people know where we're at. Gentlemen, let's go for some introductions, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of the talk. Ben Luigi, let the people know all about you.
Yeah, what's going on, guys? Well, I am a now former Marine Corps officer and, part-time, now hopefully full-time Orthodox apologist / political commentator, kind of turning my focus towards politics going forward, but still love Orthodox apologetics. You can find me at Real Ben Luigi on all platforms, mostly X and Instagram, and then I'm finally getting my YouTube off the ground here shortly. Going to be starting a live show here in December. So, yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Mr. Cleave to Antiquity.
Hey, my name is Ben. Cleave to Antiquity is the channel. You can find me on X. You can find me on YouTube. Do apologetics. Lately, I've been doing a lot of interviews with clergy, doing debates against myself, my prior Protestant videos. Going through those, I'm going to be doing a series knocking those things out. So that'll be pretty interesting. And even going through some of my old interviews that I've done with people like Joshua Shooping, and then I'll be debunking those and breaking them down. So that'll be pretty neat.
Mr. Matthew Erickson with a CK.
My name is not Ben. I am Matthew Erickson, Kingpilled. If you're familiar with just this channel, you know me well. Jason and I go way back. And also, it's really cool to be on a panel with both of these guys because I've followed Ben. I followed Ben Luigi for quite a while. As a fellow Ortho-Bro, I kind of was in that sphere for a little while, and then kind of went more in the political direction. But I've stayed following him because he's a good poster. And then Cleave here, I just kind of encountered him just recently. I was just telling before the show that my dad messaged me last couple of weeks and was saying, "Hey, have you heard of this Cleave to Antiquity guy?" And I said, "I've actually just been kind of following him recently." And he's like, yeah, I've been following him and watching his whole experience has been great. And so I told him that he has the stamp of approval from the mid-Gen X convert class. So yeah, it's very, very good to be here. I do a daily show, the Astrolabe, I stream it on Kick and upload the videos to YouTube. And I basically cover current events, politics, culture, kind of whatever strikes my fancy. And I'm very active on Twitter and have been for a long time. So I keep up with the timeline and then my proposition is let me be your algorithm. I will share with you my great timeline and give you all the reasons to be hopeful and optimistic.
So I think we should all say hi, Mr. Erickson. Welcome to the show. I'm sure Matt's dad will be watching this one.
Hi,
so
Mr. Erickson.
We'll keep our P's and Q's. We'll be trying to be polite to his baby boy over here and treat him good. Ortho-Bros, since we brought the topic. Oh boy. I remember when I met with Velika George, Archbishop George here on my birthday. I get to say that I have a archbishop who sang me happy birthday. So I got that in my resume, guys. I don't know, but I'm pretty big deal down here. When I first met him and talked to him, kind of big deal. Yeah. I talked to Jay Dyer. I don't know if you noticed, as a side quest, when I first talked to Jay, I went to my parish the day after, the day or whatever after. I had a lineup. all the young guys like, so what was Jay like? So did you ask him this? Did you ask him that? when I met Malika George, I mentioned in part of my introduction, like, so I'm one of those Ortho-Bros, and he just kind of laughed about it. Online Orthodox people, new converts, Western converts, whatever you want to call it, mostly to ROCOR, but to other churches as well. It's been a bit of a consternation. I think it started out as a label, then became sort of a bit of a pejorative. I feel we can maybe redeem the Ortho-Bro label here and now on the show. That's I don't think that's a huge ask, mostly because I think it's very effective at bringing people to the church, whether people like it or not. So let's start with you, Cleave, because you mentioned that series, which I watched, and by the way, that's brilliant. And Ben, you were on that first episode as well, because Cleave, you have the the distinction, let's call it that, of starting off your career online being as a Protestant debater, and then you've moved over to Orthodoxy. You've kind of debated yourself to the true church, which congratulations. What's that been like for you? And maybe you can speak of, let's say, the effectiveness of apologetics to bringing men, especially young men, to at least inquire into the Orthodox Church.
Sure. So, I mean, I've been doing debates for quite some time. I started on other platforms before I was on YouTube. I was actually I had run a couple of Discord servers back in the day, and I knew Redeem Zoomer through Discord, and he had actually asked me to make my YouTube channel to get involved in the debate space since the Protestants weren't doing too well. So I'd been doing debates on that platform, and I could tell you from experience there, sometimes people engage with it or maybe react to the whole debate culture in different ways. But I'll tell you, even if they have a negative reaction up front, sometimes you'll have results on the back end. I'll give you an example. I was debating a Muslim gentleman years ago, and I remember during the debate, he was heated, he was frustrated, he was, spitting out insults, so on and so forth. But a month or two later, I get a direct message from him on that platform, and he was like, "Hey, actually, that actually did kind of hit me a little bit, and I think I'm ready to follow Christ." So, I mean, you have examples of this stuff bearing
Wow.
fruit, and I think you can actually see this with kind of the explosion of orthodoxy now. I think a lot of that is owed to the debate culture. Now, granted, I mean, I couldn't probably point to a debate that really swayed me in either way. I think it's more engaging with the arguments themselves, and then thinking about them and working through my own stuff. Because from my perspective, if I'm going to engage in a debate, I have to have a complete system. So prior to doing any debate, I have to critique my own arguments. So it's through that like self-critique process that kind of led me towards the truth. And then once you have all the information, obviously you need to have your noose opened a little bit to be able to take that step going forward. But I think the debates are necessary. I do think we should continue to do them. I mean, that's really all I have to say about that.
So, I mean, Ben, you've also had more of a apologetic start, as far as I've been tracking your career. Anything to add on to that? Because I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Luigi. I mean,
Well, actually, it's kind of funny. So
I
I
use my Ben's correctly.
Cleve came clean to me because Cleve came clean to me a couple weeks ago when we met up and told me that he was the one that was feeding Redeem Zoomer his talking points for our debate. So I mean, but I still think I beat Redeem Zoomer. I don't know. I still get a lot of DMs from people that convert over that. In fact, I literally just got one, I think 2 days ago, that they said that debate is what brought them to the Orthodox Church. So I get a couple DMs a day now of people that either from me or from Jay or from other people online. They found the Orthodox Church online and they have questions. I don't really take myself that seriously. I go to, when I visit other parishes, I always see kind of like the young guys like giving me the side eye, like, and occasionally they'll come up and talk to me. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of just taken off. I originally actually also had a non-Orthodox platform. That's actually how I ended up debating Redeem Zoomer, Voice of Reason. which that debate since has been taken down by Michael Lofton. But that was actually how I landed that debate with Voice of Reason, was I already had a platform. And then from that debate is when I kind of started my Twitter, kind of Orthodox apologetics. And now I've pretty much shifted my Instagram in that direction too. So yeah, I mean, I think at this point, I think the fruit is undeniable. I think the question now is, okay, like what type of fruit is being produced? I think the enemies of online orthodoxy would argue that, yes, we're bringing in a lot of people, but they're these far right extremists and they don't really last in the church. And I can just say that that's just total nonsense. I mean, okay, maybe it's true that they're far right. That part is true. But the notion that they're, supposedly, not lasting in the church is nonsense. When I first went to the Orthodox church I was received in, the first guy I met was a total Ortho-Bro. He'd been around 7 years. And there's just so many guys that are coming in, they're planting roots. Of course, there's apostasy. There's always going to be apostasy, especially when you have such a tremendous rate of converts, right? But I would just argue that it's nonsense that the fruit we're bringing in is fruit that's not staying, at least anecdotally, and not just anecdotally, because I also, well, I guess you would call it anecdotally, but I mean, I'm able to see more than just my parish. I go to these other parishes. There's always a group of young guys, and it's not just ROCOR. I actually almost never go to ROCOR parishes. Usually, I'm in a city where there might not be a ROCOR. So I'm going to an OCA. I'm going to a Greek parish. I just made a post about a Greek parish I visited in Tallahassee. That was phenomenal. It was packed. Most of the women were veiled. There was a ton of young guys there. There was young families there. The priest gave a solid homily. He even talked about cremation, which is a very difficult topic. So I'm not one of these like, ROCOR only guys, I really have a love for all the jurisdictions. And yeah, I mean, it's really across the country and it's across the world, to be honest. It's not just the United States. I have buddies that are over in the UK, and Orthodoxy is blowing up over there too. And so it's not just happening here. Parishes are bursting at the seams all over the world. And I would argue that it's the Ortho-Bros that are kind of the primary factor there. It really is these young far right guys. That's the majority demographic. And no, they're not apostatizing. They're staying. For the most part, they're staying. So that's kind of my thoughts. I don't think you can't deny the fruit. You just can't deny the fruit. I think it's too obvious. So it's a blessing. It's a blessing to be part of it.
Matt, before I throw to you, just a reminder to the chat, send us your super chats. This is a member and audience funded channel. So we got bills to pay and meager means to pay them. So please send your super chats over on YouTube or on Streamlabs. That way it goes directly into my pocket and keeps Mrs. Mironchuck happy for at least another month, which is always the never-ending goal of my life. Happy wife, happy life. One day we'll have both, and it'll be magic, and and I'll enjoy that one moment, and then move on with my life. So please send your super chats. I know we have $5 in from super fan of the show, random username, $5. Time zones be crazy up in here. I live in Australia, sir. You have no freaking idea. Every day, every time I put one of these things together, I haven't done a panel show in a little bit. And putting the panel shows back together, I miss putting people together. I actually really enjoy it. The one thing I don't miss is coordinating time zones. That's the one thing that I did not miss that I'm now back into doing. And I'm like, I need staff. So send me money so I can buy staff and producers and all the rest of it. Matt, you and I started doing this journey essentially at the same time. You're further along in many ways, especially with the hair. I think the hair helps. The whole body hair thing that you got going on. But there's definitely a call in 2020 that went out. And now there's been a secondary call with Charlie Kirk. I'm looking for the off-road here into politics, but one of the things that I've noticed, especially with young converts, especially, let's say, from America, and it's sort of an open question, maybe you can speak on this, is authority. Who has it? Who do you need to give it up to? I think this is one of the bigger stumbling blocks, I think, for people in the liberal frame who are struggling with this idea of individualism, that I get to be the authority of my own life. I get to be the authority of my own church. You know, this is kind of what Protestantism kind of gives you, that you can be your own pastor. When you get into Orthodoxy, you find out that that's not the case, and that you have to cede that authority up to the church in order to progress in any meaningful way. Since you do a lot of stuff with politics, maybe you can speak on that. This struggle between, let's say, personal authority, seceding personal authority, but yet still having sort of a political mind, and trying to balance that, sort of living in the modern world, but yet still balancing one's faith in the church.
Yeah, so I actually, in a certain sense, it was actually politics that brought me to the church, by way of history. I started out as a libertarian and was very passionate libertarian. And then as time went on and various different things happened, I began questioning the foundational philosophical presuppositions of libertarianism, which led me back to liberalism as a political philosophy in general, the origins of liberalism, and what are the foundational, especially individualism and this conceptualized individual that people talk about in political spheres. They'll talk about the rights of the individual, but they're not talking about rights of a particular individual. They're talking about rights of this hypothetical sort of idealized individual that I've conceived of. I've imagined this depersonalized individual, and I'm going to kind of staple all these attributes onto him, and led me back to questioning the foundational assumptions of liberalism, which then led me to the Reformation. And I started to see a parallel here with what's happening politically and what was happening, that there's politics and religion are really not separate domains. We can speak of them in separate ways, but they're playing out in it's the same. It's value sets being expressed on the social level, the social communal level, and which value sets are going to reign and how are they going to be enforced and who is going to hold authority, as you're saying. So the lines between politics and religion, if you really start trying to parse them apart, you as you zoom in higher and higher resolution, you find that there is really no parsing them. You can't separate them from one another. And as I was doing this, I started questioning the basis of the Protestant Reformation, because I'm like, I see these. It was actually Curtis Yarvin who really started me on this. I was like, I see this thread that's happening through the Enlightenment. But where do these threads begin? Well, if I take them back to the Reformation, I realize actually many of these divergent, dare I say, heretical threads were already well underway, and they're finding their fullness in the Reformation, in a sense, and then continuing on into the Enlightenment. So the Enlightenment is just building off of the Reformation. All right, well, so how far back do I need to go now? You know, Curtis Yarvin has me, or Mencius Moldbug at the time, has me thinking in terms of monarchy and starting to reconsider the notions of monarchy. And what does that mean? Not just as a political structure, but as a social consciousness. What does it mean when you have a monarch and a society organizing around that monarch? And we've been so heavily propagandized against this notion and in the direction of really worshiping this individual, to the point where I started realizing that the liberal individual, I think, is whether it's literally a demon or not, there's a lot of utility in thinking of it as an actual demon that is bewitching people, getting people to worship the individual. And we need to organize society around the deification of this hypothetical individual, but not a particular individual. And so, I get back to 1054, and then I'm like, all right, well, originally I was a Protestant. I was Seventh-day Adventist, so I was like, I grew up believing not just that the Catholic Church was evil, but that the Pope was the actual literal Antichrist. As in, like, that is the fulfillment of biblical prophecy, that the Pope is the Antichrist in human form. That's how I'd grown up. So I was pretty well predisposed against. I'd never even heard of Orthodoxy. I was pretty well predisposed against Catholicism, but this had me so rattled and so just unwinding everything that I'd believed throughout 2020, 2021, that I was like, all right, well, maybe I need to rethink things about Catholicism, and then, you know, Lord of Spirits, and someone said, here, you should listen to this podcast, because I was interested in like revisionist history and starting to question the narrative of history that I'd been told on the political front, everything that led me to believe in the rights of the individual and liberalism and all this sort of thing. I'm like, well, what other things have I been lied to? Let me go back into some more revisionist history here. And someone's like, I wanted to look at things like giants and that sort of thing. And so someone recommended, oh, the Nephilim, you should listen to Lord of Spirits. And that's what turned me on to Orthodoxy. I was like, what is Orthodoxy? It's like Catholics with weird beards or something like that. So then I realized that all the things that I'd seen underway in the Enlightenment that brought us to where we are today I saw the same trends happening through the Reformation, but then I saw the same things happening, the same principles kind of being teased apart and worked out in the Great Schism. And I was like, okay, I need to go back even further. And that was what ultimately brought me to the church in the first place. But then that question of authority then becomes really important. It's really foundational. And it was Orthodox apologetics that really sealed the deal for me. Particularly listening to people like Jay Dyer and Father Deacon Ananias, who were and Dr. Bo Branson, talking about the apologetics around the Trinity, the Orthodox conception of the Trinity. And the phrase that stuck with me that really redefined my life was that in Orthodox apologetics, we start with the personhood of the Father. We don't start with the generic nature of godness. We start with the personhood of the Father. Because there is no generic concept of personhood that just sort of exists in the abstract and then you ascribe it to the Father. He is the definition of personhood. And so really, I realized that the great war of modernity is actually the war of the individual against the personhood of the Father. And modern liberal people say that liberalism is sort of like a watered down Christianity or something. And I think that this is kind of the origin of that they've tried to maintain the structure and the artifices of the church and the functioning of the church and the moral code of the church and all of this, but they've taken the personhood out and replaced it with abstract individual. And they're trying to make everything work, but it doesn't have that personhood, the personhood of the Father as expressed in the personhood of Christ. And so this is why everything is constantly so dysfunctional. And it goes back to, once you acknowledge the personhood of the Father, then that is an inherent claim to authority.
Gentlemen, you want to tag on to that?
I mean, I was looking at the comments here, and I mean, I just have to make a comment about this because this guy's talking about monarchy in the Orthodox Church. I mean, one of the things that's beautiful about the Orthodox Church is like we actually have like when it comes to like politics, like we actually have something prescriptive because we have saints that were emperors over the Byzantine Empire, and so we can actually look and see like, okay, like how was Christianity employed in government when we had saints that were actually in charge of it. And so I actually look at the Byzantine Empire as prescriptive. I think it's hilarious. The guy's probably a Roman Catholic. It's hilarious when Roman Catholics say we don't have monarchy and that the Pope is the real monarch. Like, you just outed yourself as not being the church of the first millennium, because in the church of the first millennium, right, the church and the monarch, right, they worked hand in hand. That's the two-headed Byzantine eagle, right? So you have to have both. You have the church and you have the monarch. Right. So every time a Roman Catholic says that, they're literally outing themselves as not being the church of the first millennium. You are admitting that you have a different ecclesiology now because the Pope has become both. He now has both the temporal power and, the divine power. Right. So it's just funny when they make that point. But yeah, I mean, everything you're saying is absolutely true. I think there's a lot of functions of Orthodox theology that are unique. Right. I think the person of the Father is kind of back to your question, Jason, on authority. Right. I think I had some very wise words told to me by an Orthodox priest. He said he has a select few men in his life, other Orthodox hierarchs, of course, and he takes their opinion very seriously, pretty much infallibly. And he basically just, these men, when he does things, and these men tell him he's wrong, he listens to them. And he doesn't listen to the masses. He doesn't listen to all these different people that are telling him, all these different things. He has a select few group of men that he really trusts, men of God that are hierarchs in the Orthodox Church, that he listens to. And I think that's a really good method. And I think for the young men that are coming in here, the Ortho-Bro, it's like, you got to ground yourself in a spiritual father, and don't expect that a spiritual father is going to happen right away. It takes time. I think I finally met my spiritual father, and really, I'm trying to get to know him, and and hopefully submit myself to him. Of course, I have priests in my life that I'm submitted to, but spiritual father is a unique role. Ideally, it's a lifetime role, and who you choose as your spiritual father is extremely important, because really, you should be listening to everything they say to you. That's my view of a spiritual father. I think that's the Orthodox view. So that's kind of my thought on your question regarding authority.
Cleave?
Yeah, I was having a kind of somewhat on topic here. I was having a discussion with DPH not that long ago, and we were talking about if you were really trying to dial in Christian nationalism, could you realistically come up with a game plan that had a kind of a Roman Catholic presupposition undergirding it? And we were walking through, I guess, some of the ways that Roman Catholicism I don't feel would be best suited for any kind of like Christian nationalist movement or society. If you were to look at the way that the Vatican operates today, and all of the scandals that have manifested themselves within the last, I mean, just within this papacy, it's been absolutely intense. Really, the only thing that could successfully undergird, I think, any kind of Christian nationalist movement would be Orthodoxy. Because even if you were to look at just from if we were to say, look at the Protestant movement, so the United States was, obviously was founded a Protestant nation, which is something that you mentioned just a moment ago. But George Washington, what was he? He was a Freemason, right? He was a member of the Episcopal Church. The Freemasonic ties. You mentioned the Enlightenment earlier. The Freemasons, if you were to read their text, the Alta Vendita, they had a couple of different goals when it came to subverting institutions. It was to disseminate Enlightenment ideas, so basically liberalize everything. It wasn't necessarily to put Freemasons into these high-ranking positions in the Alta Vendita was specifically talking about the Roman Catholic Church, but was to disseminate Enlightenment ideas, separation of church and state, and religious indifferentism. So, do you see those three things in the majority of mainline Protestant churches today, and also within the Roman Catholic Church today? Yeah, you see all three. So it seems like the goal's been accomplished. But let's go back to the beginning of America's founding. So you have George Washington, who was literally a prominent Freemason. After his inauguration, he writes a letter back to his lodge, says something along the lines of, "I will always do what's in the best interest of the lodge in which I am a member." Look at the Episcopal Church. Their seminary is literally set up next to the George Washington Freemasonic monument. So have we seen what the fruits of the Enlightenment are within the West today? I mean, America's not a very old nation at all. It didn't take very long for these Enlightenment values to kind of unravel everything. I think the only real way going forward is going to be Orthodoxy, because if we're talking about subversion of institutions, well, if the goals of the Alta Vendita have been met, you can call it Freemasonry, you can call it ecumenism, you could call it whatever. The label doesn't necessarily matter. But if you were to look at the ecclesiology of the Roman Catholic Church, how difficult is it to subvert one guy? It's not very difficult, right? It's pretty easy. Now, how difficult would it be to subvert an entire synod of people? That's a little more difficult. That's a bit of a challenge. It's almost like God knew what he was doing when he set up the ecclesiology of the church. So I mean, I think if we were to look at like action plan for saving the West, your religious presuppositions really flavor how you're going to kind of move forward with any kind of Christian nationalist action plan. Is Protestantism going to work? Well, it's been a failed project in the West, and it didn't even take that long in America for it all to unravel. Almost every single mainline denomination is completely liberalized, subverted. Even the non-denominational churches, when they get big enough, they just end up shilling for either foreign interests or domestic interests that have subverted their institutions. There's several instances of CIA subversion, especially within some of the non-denominational megachurches or the Pentecostal ones. They've been found out to basically be gathering information for intelligence agencies. I mean, it's absolutely insane. So Protestantism, is that going to work for a Christian nationalist movement? No, absolutely not. And I think it's actually kind of funny that you have guys like Joel Webben, who I somewhat respect. I think he has some good takes on some things, but he's got Baptist presuppositions. How is that going to work? Baptists historically have been pacifist. How do you have a pacifist government? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. If you're going to take Christian nationalism seriously, you're going to have to go with something that allows the use of force. I mean, you could just say, well, you know what, we disregard that. But if you're imputing that label onto your movement, or that's your presupposition, eventually it's going to loop back to that. So let's look at Roman Catholicism. I mean, we were just talking about the Alta Vendita. Look at all of the things that have been going on within especially post-Vatican II, in reference to ecumenism, in reference to their support of foreign interests, in reference to the statements of this very Pope that we're dealing with today. Leo has actively basically said he's advocated for open borders. You even have guys like I saw a clip of Nick Fuentes was actually frustrated with the Pope and his statements about the open borders nonsense that he did. I don't even remember when that was. It was a couple weeks ago. It seems like there's a new scandal every single week. Do you think Roman Catholic presuppositions are going to make a successful Christian nationalist movement? Absolutely not. One guy's super easy to subvert. You need conciliar church governance. You need the same ecclesiology of the first millennium. And that's just kind of my take there. I don't think it's that difficult to reason to that point.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up
Yeah,
Christian
and-
nationalism. Sorry, please go ahead, Ben.
Well, I was just going to caveat off that real quick because, I like me and Christian Mario were just talking about this on his stream. Like our most liberal bishop, is a mega, he loves Trump, for example, like, because the Pope Trump, like that's what he's doing. He's encouraging the Catholic bishops, the Roman Catholic bishops to counter signal Trump, to actively speak out against Trump. Whereas, our most liberal bishop, Archbishop Elpidiforos, is MAGA, like he supports Trump. Right. So it's funny when Roman Catholics bring up, like, they have two things. They literally only bring up two things. It's the baptism of the child of the gay couple from Archbishop Elpidiforos like 4 years ago. And then it's the female deacon in Africa at one parish. And that was like corrected within a year. Those are like the only two things they have. They have, first of all, the first category, that's Latin canon law. They actually do that normatively in Latin canon law. And then for the female deacons, when Pope Francis said no to female deacons, they cut off what he said right after that. He said it's because women always fulfill the role of a deaconess. If you watch the whole script, he literally says no, because women always have done the role of a deaconess. And if you go to a Novus Ordo, there's literally like 20-year-old girls that are handing out the Eucharist in jeans. Yep. Like, I mean, it's just the fact that they would bring this up as some sort of like, oh, look at the Ortho-Bro. It's like, it's just ridiculous. Like, we are so much further to the right when it comes to tradition than even the furthest right. Even like, who's like a very conservative Roman Catholic bishop. Like, I'm trying to even think. What's that one guy's name that they always bring up? They always have the memes about him.
Vigano?
What's his name? Not James Martin. He's the far left. What's that?
Well, Vigano's out. So maybe Mueller, maybe Burke.
No, not him. No. Well, yeah,
Burke?
like just the furthest, the most conservative one is still to the left, right, of like our most left, bishop. So it's just a ridiculous thing to bring up. It's very clear that we are the bastion of traditionalism in Christianity. We're the only institution left. We are the only institution left when it comes to traditionalism in Christianity. And what this is it's a fruit of 1,000 years of heresy in the West. Like, this didn't just happen. When we talk about Vatican II and everything happening in mainline Protestantism, like all of these things are the result ultimately of the Filioque way, of papal supremacy, which led to the Enlightenment, which, came from the Reformation. And now it's just led to full-blown liberalism. And it's only going to get worse. These guys that think it's somehow going to get better, like, wake up. It's not going to get better. It's only going to get worse. So, anyways, it's not a good reason to become Orthodox when you see the Pope.
I thought you were going to say full-blown AIDS. I thought you were going to say full-blown AIDS there for a second, Ben. I was like, well, yeah, same thing. But please go ahead.
Nice.
Oh, yeah, no. I tell people, I'm like, look, it's not a good reason to become Orthodox just because, the Pope celebrates a Hindu feast. What you need to look at is why. Like, why is this happening? And I thought the ice cube would have been, and that is a good reason.
I thought the ice cube alone would have been a good enough reason. Like, he's blessing an ice cube now. Okay, can we just all please? I saw some posts actually. I thought this was interesting. That he's blessing the ice cube. It's climate change, some of that, and that there is a connection to Baal. There's a direct connection to Baal because of Baal is also considered a god of the harvest and climate itself and the weather. So worshiping the climate in some way is you can make the connection to worshiping, the other guy. So
see, when I first heard that the Pope was blessing ICE, I thought that this was a reference to Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and I thought he was doing like a performative demonstration. He's blessing ICE here and I was like, oh, based, and then I realized no.
Yeah. You know what? Let me add one more thing, if that's all right. So I thought about this earlier today, and I've been thinking about this for a little while since people are talking about Nick quite a bit lately. I feel like it's going to come to a point where he's probably going to have some kind of rude awakening. I think he seems to be pretty tapped into the things that are going on online, especially in America right now. I would not be surprised if Leo straight up came out and decried his entire movement. And he's running this on, and I'm not saying that would be a good thing. I'm saying that could probably derail what he's doing. I would say if he really wants to be successful, he's going to have to become Orthodox. He's going to have to make the movement Orthodox, or he's going to have to distance himself from the Roman Catholicism, because I could totally see Leo coming out and saying like, hey, you guys are anti-Semitic, so whatever, and throw some kind of buzzword out there, and say oh, this is actually violation of ABC 123, so we decry this movement. I could see that happening, and then he's got all his eggs in this one basket that are going to come spilling out on the sidewalk. What he should do, I think, if he was, if he's foreseeing that, is he needs to he needs to distance himself from the Roman Catholicism and make inroads into Orthodoxy, or become Orthodox. That's the better answer. But I don't know how feasible that is for him. But I could just see that crashing the whole thing to the floor.
There's an extra interesting layer to that as well, because JD Vance is very close to he's a recent convert to Roman Catholicism. He's very, I was just recently listening to or reading an account of these secret lectures that Peter Thiel has been giving on the Antichrist. And he's just sitting up there, and he's doing a Q&A. And one of the people asked him about JD Vance. And one of the things he said about JD Vance is one of his concerns about him is that he's too obsequious to the Pope. And he needs to have more distance between him and the Pope and be less willing to just kneel and respect him all the time, basically. So if Pope Leo came out, and as Tyler points out in the chat too, they're both from Chicago as well, which adds another interesting wrinkle. But if he came out and he condemned Fuentes by name directly, that would be undeniably a flagrant political act. Like that's specifically to drive a wedge between the Groypers and Vance, or to accentuate the wedge that's already there. I just finished doing a show talking about how basically the Tucker Carlson sphere, the Nick Fuentes sphere, and the JD Vance sphere, basically they're being forced into a coalition together by the actions of the Mark Levens and such of the world. and that basically it's going to be undeniable that they're going to have to set aside their differences and figure out a way to work together. And that would be having the Pope come out. I hadn't even thought about that, but having the Pope come out and explicitly condemn Fuentes would really put JD Vance in a difficult spot.
Yeah.
You know, you brought up Christian.
Yeah, for those.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to bring up that a lot of people don't know that the I think it's called like the UCCG. It's like the U.S. Coalition of Catholic Bishops. They actually have formally by name condemned him and his movement by name. Now that the Groypers sort of seethe about that, they said it's not binding, but it is literally the U.S. Coalition of Catholic Bishops. So you can argue whether or not it's binding, but they did condemn him by name. I think it would, in order for him to convert, I think it would take something like excommunication, or at least a formal pronouncement by the Pope. So,
because you brought up Christian nationalism before, Cleave, and I think it's a hot topic button. I know Andrew Wilson's talked about it and a few others from the Orthodox sphere. The only misgivings I've ever had about it was never the concept of Christian nationalism, although some of the people who are voicing it are dubious at best, from the more Protestant evangelical wings. But just to tack on to what you were saying before, the major problem is that, okay, which Christianity are we talking about here? Currently now we're starting to see this reports of like there's a civil war going on inside the right-wing conservative party of America, the Republicans, between the Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson branch and the pro-Zionist branch, and they're trying to create this dialectic because liberalism thrives off dialectic. So that now this is the new one. The one thing that Orthodoxy does is effectively, and this is a quote from Buck Johnson, is that Orthodoxy is the dialectic killer. It goes into dialectics and destroys it because it is the truth, and you can't have conflict within the truth. The conflict, remedies all conflicts, because once you're standing in truth, there it is. There's no conflict with that. So to tie it back into, let's say, politics, because this seems to be the more bugaboo, right? We're commanded to be in this world, not of it. But of course, and I've talked a lot about the liberal frame and breaking that frame and getting free of it and seeing things as they are. But we still, liberalism is. We have it. We're in it, and there's, what we might do with it 100 or 200 years from now is a future concern. But let's talk about American politics right now. We had two callings, one in 2020, and now with the Charlie Kirk assassination, the second calling. Churches are being flooded across the board, in many denominations and other churches as well. Where do we see this going, gentlemen, especially for the Orthodoxy? Ben, before we press play, we had talked a little bit about the importance of getting into politics, of getting Orthodox people into politics, and that kind of tacks into that whole Christian nationalism idea, is that if you're going to have some sort of cohesive Christian nationalism, well, we need our voices in there too, and we need let's say a cohesive narrative around what is Christianity.
This is actually something that I've done a lot of quite a bit of thinking about, because it was my transition going from politics to Orthodoxy, and the way that I did that. I called the show Kingpilled before I encountered Orthodoxy. I was just doing politics, and I was getting into the monarchy thing, and just landed on Kingpilled. And then I went through kind of the period going through my catechumenate. I actually kind of pulled back from the show a little bit, because I was trying to figure out how to go, like, what angle do I take? What's okay to talk about? What's not? I don't want people to think that I'm some sort of authority or expert or anything like that. And I'm still, I was only baptized a few years ago, so I'm very, very young in the faith so far. But I've thought about this extensively, because, I am a Christian and I am a nationalist, but then, the thing with labels, I've got my thing I've said before about mouth sounds and mind pictures, that everyone will use the same mouth sound, but we have a different mind picture that we associate with it. And this yields all sorts of miscommunications. So Christian nationalist as a specific label is an extremely thorny one, because like you say, Jason, well, which Christianity? What is Christianity? How does this, there's a long history of various different Christians brutally abusing and persecuting other Christians. The last 2,000 years has all sorts of history of this. So I've heard people, sober-minded spiritual people who I respect, foreseeing, kind of prophesying that there's going to come a time where Orthodoxy is going to be persecuted in America by other Christians in the name of Christ. And it's perhaps something like icons, or there's all sorts of different reasons why they might decide to go after us. And we're kind of an easy one. It would be pretty easy for Catholics and Protestants to say, well, we're the Western ones, so we're going to create our little dialectic here where we're on one side, and Orthodox, you're the Eastern ones, you're the weird ones, you're the ones that are non-native, you're the kind of, nobody really knows who you are, you're so mystical and all of this that you're getting lumped in with all the Indians and the Hindus and the Chinese and all of it. You're just an Eastern religion, and so we're going to purge you out from within our midst. And really, going back to the idea of the personhood of the Father, and then ironically iconography itself, there's like, for me, trying to wrap my mind around all of this and plan for it and everything, I'm just like, there's no way. This is too much for one single person to try to take on or strategize for or whatever. I need a much simpler, more straightforward praxis. Which is when you understand the Father, the personhood of the Father, and the way that Christ is an icon of the Father, and then we are called to be icons of Christ. And you understand this, there's this descending Trinitarian model through the Orthodox Church, where you have the Father with the Son and the Spirit forming one Trinity, and then you have the Son with like the priest and the bishop forming another Trinity. Then you might have the bishop and the priest and the deacon forming another Trinity, and you might have the priest and the deacon and the layman forming another Trinity. And then it's in the family as well. You have the father and you have the mother and the children forming another Trinity. You have this fractal Trinitarian hierarchy that exists in the truly Christian Orthodox frame of the world, and this ports very easily into politics. You talk about Symphonia, the church, the two-headed eagle. You have the emperor or the king, and the king has a spiritual father that he confesses to and that he is subordinate to. And yet the king also holds his own authority in his own right over his domain. But he also submits that authority to the church because he is a member of the church. He is actually an ordained member of the church, and he submits himself to the church. But then, and so the church has its space and its role, and the state has its space and its role with its head of state. And the head of state is properly the father of the country. He is the first citizen. He is the pinnacle of citizenship in the nation. He is the one in whom the rest of the nation is, whose personhood in whom the rest of the nation is formed. And this is a model that can be manifested into the world by each individual man behaving as a king of his own domain, because this scales up fractally. So if you begin acting as if you are a king of your domain, then you scale that up, and the more responsibility and accountability that you take on for yourself. Another word for responsibility or accountability is authority. You take on that authority, and you're continually submitted to the church. You're continually submitted to your spiritual father, but you're also exercising control and authority over your domain. This is a long game. This is a long game that has to be played for decades, centuries, a very long time. But Jason, you coined the term "build a Caesar" in the political sphere, where we're looking at, you kind of have the micro Caesar here. You have each guy who has his one-off thing. Bukele has the way he manages crime. Millet has the way that he manages government employment. Each one sort of has their own. They're just a Caesar in one domain. But the more that you get this, the more you're beginning to manifest that actual Caesar who kind of brings it all together into one picture. Well, this goes down the scale as well. That you can begin acting as, to use the model, you can act as the Caesar of your own domain within whatever limitations you have, continually submitted to the church. And the only thing that we can't control what other Christian sects or denominations, should they acquire political power and choose to use it against us, we can't really control that. We can only account for it, and also commit that if we were to attain political power in our own right, we're not going to abuse it that way. Because if you were a proper Orthodox Christian king submitted to your spiritual father, you're not going to go out and maliciously persecute other sects of Christians because they aren't Orthodox, because you're going to be answering, you're going to have to go confess this to your spiritual father. So this is a model that works fractally on the way up and on the way down as well. And also, I mean, you have to be kind of careful that you're not like, this is the eternal battle that politics and religion are not the same thing, or politics and religion are not different things, but they're also not the same thing. So you don't want to be necessarily partaking in the life of the church specifically because you want to go do this for the sake of acquiring political power. And this is the best way to manifest political power, so I'm going to engage in this process cynically. Because if you do engage in this process cynically, then it's not going to work.
I'm mute, dude. You're muted. Cleave, what's your response on this? Because yeah, I'm mute. I mean, again, you've come from being let's say a known Protestant going into Orthodoxy. I know I've seen a lot of the comments in the chat here. I think people are still struggling with that idea of submitting to the authority of the church. It's amazing to me. Sometimes I do these kind of throwaway lines, and this seems to always be like the glue, like the stumbling block for some people. Like, no, you don't have to submit to authority or anything like that. Just from my own personal experience, I remember the first time I really encountered this before I started going to liturgy and having a spiritual father was when I had Father John Whiteford on the show, and when I made the invitation to him to talk about Pashka and fasting. He was like, "Yeah, sure, no problem, but it should be fine. But I have to go talk to my bishop first to get permission." And I thought that was like, interesting. And then, of course, now that I'm in the church, and I realize I'm asking permission for all sorts of things, like to do this show, to talk to you gentlemen, to do like pretty much a lot of things. I'm like, "Hey, Father bless." So, and that's a minor thing, as you're saying, Matt. It goes down the hierarchy to the person, right? Where everyone is are showing that same sort of level of respect and that in that submission to the authority. And who is the authority? Well, the authority ultimately is Christ, like through the body of the church, through the teachings, through the rituals, through all the formations of the church. But it leads to the same submission to that authority. So just to throw it to you, Cleave, and gentlemen, and anyone can answer on this. And I'm going to give it to Matt. I'm going to give you the conch. I'm going to be right back to use the facilities. But old man bladder, it's horrible. But Cleave, let's start with you. Since you're coming over the bridge, right? Since you came home to the church, was that a struggle for you? Was that issue of authority an issue for you? Was it an issue before you when you were a Protestant, or was there sort of a learning curve that you had to go through when you started to embrace Orthodoxy?
I don't know. For me, no, not really. I mean, that might be a boring answer, but no, not really. It wasn't too much of an issue for me. I mean, I think one thing that was really helpful for me coming from the Protestant background and doing what I did as far as apologetics was I was already aware of a lot of the things going on within Orthodoxy, as well as some of the warts, so on and so forth, and what to expect, and all of that kind of stuff. So, and nothing really has caught me off guard. It's just a matter of doing it. It's just a matter of sticking to the obediences given to me, and prayer rules, so on and so forth, and even as far as like running the channel, being obedient to the guidance that priests have given me, and how to handle that, and have guests on, and all that kind of stuff, and the direction to go forward has been advice that priests have given me, clergy has given me. So I mean, throughout the entire process, even before I made the announcement video, I kind of had things kind of lined up. I was communicating with clergy, and even up to the announcement video, I was working with Father Peter Years as well. So I don't know, for me, not necessarily. I don't think that was too big of an issue. Really, while I was a Protestant, the biggest thing for me was, is it true? You know, some people, I know a lot of the evangelicals or Protestants will they've coined this term, ecclesial anxiety. Like they're anxious about the claims, the exclusivity claims, or whatever, whether it comes to Roman Catholicism or Orthodoxy. That was never really a factor in my journey. It was either true or it wasn't. But if there is any Protestant that's watching this and you are quote unquote struggling with ecclesial anxiety, I would say that's probably for a reason. That's probably cognitive dissonance, and you shouldn't ignore it or allow yourself to kind of like passively push that off to the side. Because a lot of the Protestant apologetics now isn't really so much to win people to Protestantism; it's to keep people Protestant because they're bleeding out. So they've kind of I know I don't want to name anybody because I'm friends with some of these people, and you know, obviously I want to try to act as a bridge. If any of them are interested in Orthodoxy, I'd like to remain friendly enough for them to be able to send me a DM and ask me questions. So I don't want to call anybody out by name, but I know a lot of the Protestant apologetics branding is really just the softening of the conscience, the assuaging of the conscience, trying to poke even the slightest hole in maybe historical framework, or poke even the slightest hole in an apologetic argument, even if it doesn't result in a coherent framework. It's like, if I can just toss this little distraction, I can push off the dissonance for a while. I feel like that's how a lot of the Protestants are operating right now, and things are actually pretty fragile in that camp. Now, granted, again, I've never really been an anxious person, so that's that's not something that really factored in my conversion. But I've spoken to a lot of different Protestants that is where they're at. Even prior to coming to YouTube, I met a lot of the different Protestant apologists in a Discord server that I joined to network with Gavin, who's a friend of mine. But the server is tailored for people who have ecclesial anxiety, and a lot of these same people are actively in these Discord servers suffering from anxiety and acting as apologists. So I think we're going to see a lot more people coming to either Orthodoxy, or they may take the easy route out. I think Roman Catholicism seems easy for people because they don't have to change too much, and they also see kind of the social benefit right now, which is something I know, Luigi, you want to work on. And I think that's a beautiful thing to open up paths for, because right now the way that people are looking at it, they're like, well, if I'm looking at between Orthodoxy or Roman Catholicism, what if I want to be a politics guy? Well, I see a lot of Roman Catholic politics guys out there. So, I would have people to network with, and maybe I won't be isolated or whatever. So I think what you're trying to do, Luigi, pushing for more Orthodox politicians, more Orthodox people in various different sectors, is going to be super important going forward as people continue to flood into the Orthodox Church. And these churches are getting packed. I mean, at my church, sometimes people are like, the entire sanctuary is full. The narthex is just about full. There's people standing in like every crack and crevice. So, people are absolutely flooding in. And I want to say this too, because we're talking about kind of what to do going forward. I think what we were talking about in the back room is super, super important. We need people that are Orthodox, that aren't just doing apologetic stuff. We need them in like every sector, right? We need like Orthodox cooking channels, like people who have like a cooking channel that are Orthodox, gamers that are Orthodox. Even if I think it's a little cringe, VTubers that are Orthodox, because I know there's one out there that's a lady, and she had posted on X. She's like, "What do we do to like get more women interested in Orthodoxy?" I'm like, you need people who are not teaching, that just happen to be Orthodox, that happen to be women, that have platforms. You know what I mean? Obviously, I don't want them. They shouldn't be teaching theology, obviously, but I think that's like the perfect segue there. Or even if they're doing like Christian life stuff, we need more of that. We need more edits. I mean, you think what you think about them. The edits are powerful and effective. So if you're out there and you can't think, you're like, oh, I need like a good side hustle, or I want to, or if you're just like, hey, I want to contribute towards building what's going on. Make the edits channel. You might think it's slop. but it actually serves a big purpose, and it really does. I watched an interview, a documentary, where there's a guy in the Netherlands, and he's like, it's like, oh, Orthodoxy exploding in the Netherlands or something, and he's like showing, he's going through TikTok reels of Orthodox edits on his phone. So I'm like, this is like the first thing he's showing the journalists. It's like, look at these. They're so awesome. Like, you know, this is what's like kind of piquing my interest in this. We need more of that. We can't slow down. We just got to keep plowing forward. Orthodoxy in every single sector: cooking, gaming, VTubers, the edits. We need edit makers. We need people making shorts channels. Make shorts channels of all the Orthodox guys. Clip our stuff and just compile it and just blast it out there. Every single aspect. So yeah, especially politics, because right now I think people are looking at Roman Catholicism as a career move. I heard Joel Webbin make a comment. He said something along the lines of he said, my conscience allows me to remain Baptist now, but if it ever came to that point, I would have to jump the shark, you know, and that means Rome, basically. And so it's like, okay, well, like I can see how far, especially a lot of the Christian nationalist guys are like, I can see how far my Protestant presuppositions can take me and where they can't. So for now, I'm this. But later, if I need the career move, I'm going to go to Roman Catholicism, which is a terrible reason to go to Rome, because it's like basically it's basically like swallowing a bomb, kind of. You know, if sooner or later that thing's gonna blow up. It might you know.
Boarding the Titanic.
Yeah, it's boarding the Titanic. It looks nice. It looks nice. It holds a lot of people, but that thing's gonna sink, dude.
Yeah, one term I'm going to throw over to Ben, but to tack on, but the term I'm kind of trying to popularize is full spectrum dominance of orthodoxy. Full spectrum orthodoxy, where orthodoxy is present in all things. And I want to take a different tack with it than, let's say, the prosperity gospel and all those influence, you know, those kind of influencers, where we can be aggressive without being aggressive, if that makes sense, right? Where it's just everywhere. We have the better icons, we have the better look, we have the better music, we have not just on theology, but we have the better culture surrounding us. You know, it's faith and fellowship. There are all these things that are interconnected to the Orthodox world, which we don't have to create. It's there. We don't have to invent it. It's already there. We just need to get it out to people so they can see, you know, come and see. Well, when you come and see, here's what it is. And we need to, I think, stop being ashamed or frightened by it or apologetic about it. That, you know, it's the truth. So why should you shy away from the truth? At the same time, I don't want to fall into, as we talked about on last week's show with Buck Johnson, I don't want to fall into the hot topic Christianity kind of movement where it becomes all image. Like, sell the T-shirts, you know, death to the worlds, all that stuff is fantastic, but there has to be that it has to be still grounded in the true faith. And so we're bringing people in, but we're you know, we have to, I guess, also prepare them for the duties and responsibilities that they're going to acquire once, even as an inquirer. So, but Ben, please go ahead.
I'm chuckling over here at the comment that says, "Yeah, we're on the spectrum," but no, I think I have a lot to say on this topic. You know, I think we need to graduate from this phase of where basically like every Orthodox creator there is basically like an Orthodox apologist. And I think that was a phase that needed to happen because, you know, obviously Orthodoxy in the West, you know, it was for the most part not very well known. And so what we're seeing now is like Orthodoxy has just gained all this insane traction online. And we're at a point now where we have enough people in the apologetics corner that a lot of us can kind of start to spread our wings. And that's really why I'm looking into the political sphere. You know, I love apologetics. I'm never going to fully abandon apologetics. You know, any Muslim, you know, creator who wants to debate me on the Trinity down the line, I'll happily do that. You know, Hakikachu or any of these guys. But I would say that, you know, I'm feeling pulled towards, you know, the political realm, you know, specifically, you know, political commentary. And, you know, I look at like something like Mormonism, like they never really graduated from like Mormons are constantly having to defend, like they've tried to like create their own infrastructure and they're very wealthy, but like nobody's like looking at a Mormon business owner in like a positive light. And I think we have a really good opportunity, you know, with Orthodoxy now that it's gained traction in you know, canonical Christianity, I guess you could say, for Protestant, Orthodox, and Catholic. That's kind of how Americans see it now. You have sort of the big three, right? Protestant, Roman Catholic, and Orthodox. Obviously for us, we're the only ones that are canonical, but that's how American Christians see it. And so I think they'll positively see, okay, this is a political commentator that's Orthodox, or this is a politician who's Orthodox, or this is a business owner who's Orthodox. I think the average American Christian would actually look at that in a positive light now. And they know what Orthodoxy is, you know, because of the internet, you know. And so I think we are at a point where we get to graduate. You know, we get to graduate now and actually spread our wings. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited about it. You know, for me, and I think for you guys too, like when I hear St. Paisios say America will be holy, like, you know, I think it's easy to meme about that. You know, it's easy to post these things like America will be Orthodox. It's not a meme for me. Like, I genuinely believe that America will be Orthodox because that's what the saints say. And it's not just St. Paisios. Why do you think Elder Ephraim planted 17 monasteries in the United States? Why did he do this? Well, because he had a vision in mind from his spiritual father, St. Joseph the Hesychast, right, who was preparing him for coming to America and starting these monasteries, right? And they're going to be the anchor of American Orthodoxy. And that's actually going to happen. But guess what? We have to actually make it happen. It's not just going to happen. We have to make it happen. And we get to be part of that. That's the cool thing. I love the passage in Esther. Perhaps you were born for such a time as this. We are born in such an incredibly special time. And we found Orthodoxy as, I mean, we are so early right now. People don't even realize how early we are in Orthodoxy. Like we are just getting started. I mean, this is just the beginning. So I'm excited about the future, man. And I genuinely believe St. Paisios. I genuinely believe Elder Ephraim, and it's going to happen, but we got to do it. And it's not going to be easy. So
I think part of the reason why Orthodoxy on the internet began in the apologetic sphere is actually kind of ironically in large part because of the rationalistic nature of Protestantism. And even Roman Catholicism is the West is very heady. We were big on analysis and wanting to provide rational, logical justifications for things. And a lot of this is because of, I think, the depersonalization dynamic within liberalism, the focus on the individual over the person, which is kind of a depersonalizing thing, which makes it much more abstract. I know growing up as a Protestant, and I want to throw a bone to some of my Protestant friends here as well, because I'm not that far removed. That's my culture. That's my people. I listened to the Charlie Kirk memorial service, and I was like, there's the part of me who now attends an Orthodox parish who's like, this isn't church to me. But it wasn't that long ago that I would have viewed that as essentially a church service. And I understand why the people who are there, why it's impacting them as profoundly as it is, because I know these people. I know that these are not like, it's become kind of fashionable among Orthodox circles, even in Roman Catholic circles, to be kind of like, oh, those silly lowbrow Protestants, they're so their arguments are so terrible and they're so vapid and they don't know history and all of that. And there's kind of a reason why those things, as a lifelong Protestant, part of encountering Orthodoxy was realizing, holy crap, I'm so vapid, I don't know anything about history. And I was pretty relatively well read for my age. I went to an evangelism school.
To be fair, you came from a religion that was started from a woman who got hit in the head with a rock.
Hit in the nose with a rock. Yes.
Oh, sorry.
And started having visions.
Hit in the face with a rock. Yeah.
But I grew up on Dr. Greg Bonson. Like, I grew up listening to apologetics for fun when I was in grade school. And I've been in that world for a really long time. And one thing you said, Cleave, that I stuck on was, you kind of didn't have that ecclesial anxiety. You just wanted to know what was true. And that really resonated with me because I was in a similar boat. It wasn't that difficult really for me I went from believing that the Pope is the Antichrist for for my entire life to being like, wait a second, maybe there's something here that I need to think about. And I feel a lot closer to Roman Catholics now than I used to, even though, as I say, there's a reason I became Orthodox and not Catholic. But I didn't really have that ecclesial anxiety, but I wanted to know what was true. And I know that there are a lot of Protestants out there who are that way. My sister attends Reformation Bible College in Florida, and the world that she's in that R.C. Sproul tradition, and they're extremely rigorous and sober and devout and thoughtful and well-read and well-studied. They're what they're lacking is not like soberness or authenticity. Really, they exist in the world that they're in, and by and large, they aren't really familiar with Orthodoxy. That was where I was. I basically never even heard of it. I didn't even know it was a thing. And this isn't for lack of awareness of the history of Christianity or anything like that. It just really had not penetrated the culture, and it's penetrated so much over the past half a decade or so. And these sorts of things scale up exponentially, which is kind of funny because Orthodoxy has actually been on the American continent since the 1700s. It got here really, really early. It just really has not spread and proliferated until now. And it's the reason I think it proliferated through the apologetic circles is because Protestants have such an emphasis on what they believe, what they think, the thoughts that they are thinking, the things that they give mental assent to. Whereas Orthodoxy is concerned with those things, but it's also concerned with the actual things that you're doing. What are you doing in your day-to-day life? What rituals are you participating in? We're all participating in rituals. You brush your teeth ritually. You put your pants on one leg. You always use the same leg because it's a ritual for you. All of these habits are actual little rituals that you're participating in. And is your Christian life ritualized consciously and intentionally in that way? A big thing for me going through Lord of Spirits was realizing I'd always kind of thought of, heaven and earth. You have like the spiritual realm and the physical realm. And these are sort of like two different realms that exist independently of each other. But no, there's one reality, and we interface with that reality physically, and we also interface with that reality spiritually. The things we do spiritually affect the physical, and the things we do physically affect the spiritual. They're not two different domains. It's the same domain. So the things that you are, the physical rituals that you're partaking in are changing you spiritually. And just the same, the spiritual rituals you partake in are changing you physically or materially, you might say. This is one and the same. It's not a different thing. So if you see more and more people who are Orthodox, who are living as an Orthodox person, you realize that it becomes normalized. It becomes more familiar. This isn't some like weird, creepy, mystical sect. These are normal people who are just participating in the life of the church. And you don't have to be some sort of weird esoteric mystic to participate in the life of the church. You can be completely normal and participate in the life of the church because this is what the church is. And it's something that continues. It's not just you go to church, but then it continues. It persists throughout your each week between you attending liturgy, if you're going to Vespers, or even just in your daily life with your prayers, with your icons in your house surrounding you, with your fasting schedule. All of these things are things that pervade all of your life. And so seeing more Orthodox people who are engaged in normal things like politics or culture or business, who are Orthodox, and they're doing that in an Orthodox way, it helps with that normalization and familiarization for the people who are simply not familiar with it. And then there is that background of the actual theological, rigorous, really heady dynamic, which will appeal, I think, to a lot of Protestants who are very sincere and authentic and are very concerned with truth. But when you start seeing that truth lived out, it takes on a new bearing than simply what thoughts are you thinking? What propositions have you mentally assented to?
want to get some
Yeah,
any tag on comments, and I'll just before you do, thank you to everyone who's been sending super chats over on the channel. Continue to do so. New goal set up. We're gonna we have another 15 to 20 minutes left, if that's okay with you, gentlemen. I don't want to keep you all night long, or I'll keep you as long as I can. So send me over super chats before the end of the show. I will host an after show if we hit that goal, and I'll even join that goal club with my decrepit smoke-filled lungs. So help us hit that goal, and we'll help that. We'll do that over. Send it over in Streamlabs. Those will count. Someone just asked if I read out the donos at the end. If the donos have a question or something, a comment attached to them, I will. I'm not seeing any of those, so send me your super chats with a thing attached to it, a comment or something like that, and I will read it out as long as it's TOS friendly. So keep your language safe and sound here, folks. Gentlemen, any tag-ons to that with what Matt just said, and then I have a final little round table question for you guys.
What I'm passionate about is, I really do think we need American Orthodoxy. We need an Orthodoxy that has American nationalism that's part of it. Because if you look at, this is exactly what happened in Russia. This is how Georgian Orthodoxy is. This is how Serbian Orthodoxy is. Like they all have they have Orthodoxy, right? But they also have their national identity. And I think we're really starting to establish, what American Orthodoxy really looks like as an identity. I think that's important. I also want to make the point that America really hasn't been born yet when it comes to its flavor of Christianity. I mean, I just reject this notion that Protestantism is a single category. I mean, if you look at the founding of the United States, you had a strong Catholic presence in Maryland, for example. You had several of the founding fathers were deists, and they carried that in the state constitutions. You had certain, states that had various Protestant denominations, but they were excommunicating each other. Like those Protestant denominations were not united. And so America really has never had this universal identity when it comes to its religion. And I would argue that Orthodoxy has not necessarily equal claim, but does have a claim to American heritage when it comes to its religion, because the Greeks were here very early in St. Augustine. Obviously, Philip Ludwell III was a politician in, I believe, Virginia, and he actually contributed to appointing George Washington to colonel. You obviously had the Russians that were here in Alaska very early on in the late 1700s in their evangelism there. So, I mean, I would say that that Orthodoxy has had a presence here in the United States, dating all the way back to its inception. And so if you're an American watching this and you're like, man, I really value my American identity, I want you to know that, we do have a claim to American heritage, in Orthodoxy. And it is our passion to really bring American Orthodoxy into the mainstream American network. And I think we can do it. Like I was saying earlier, I really do believe America will be Orthodox, and America will be born. It'll be truly born again. It'll be born again as an Orthodox nation.
Let me just jump in here real quick and say that one of my theses on the political side of things is that that the American empire, it's very fashionable, it's very in vogue to say that we're in the collapse of the downfall of the descendancy of the American empire. And I've become convinced that the American empire actually hasn't even been born yet. Or maybe it's been born, but it hasn't even come close to adulthood. We're in the adolescence of the American empire. It's still on the ascendancy. There's a lot of economic and other geopolitical arguments I can make for that. You can go to my channel to see those things. But or Jason has a lot of good stuff on that. But I think that ties in with what you're saying there, that we have yet to really experience the fullness of American ethnogenesis, the birth of the American ethnos, properly speaking. We're seeing the strands of it. There's various different flavors, but they're going to emerge more fully and coalesce into a legitimate defined American identity. I mean, the country has only been around for 250 years. Were people here before then, but even thinking of America as America, properly speaking, is very, very young in world history. So if you imagine 300 years hence, looking back, people would look at the early 2000s as when America was really starting to emerge onto the global stage and establishing itself as a defined identity. So I think what you're saying, Luigi, is exactly correct, that we're there's the great opportunity here for Orthodoxy to make its stamp on what the American ethnicity is going to emerge into.
Cleave?
I think they summed it up pretty good. I'm getting kind of tired here. It's kind of late, but
No worries, man. Let's wrap this up with this one, and we'll just do an open topic. And gentlemen, I'd love to have you back on again. Thanks again for agreeing to come on the show. I've said on the channel a few times that Orthodoxy is essentially the Dark Souls of Christianity, the game that is, in terms of difficulty setting, because it's a lot of hard, easy things. Just having a prayer rule, doing the fasting, all the rest of it. Overcoming your own self, attacking your own passion. So here's an open question for you, gentlemen, and we'll just do this for the last one. A little bit of fun stuff to end it off. In the vein of video game YouTube channels, what are the things about Orthodoxy that you wish you knew before you started Orthodoxy? What's the things about Orthodoxy that you wish you'd known earlier? Let's go around the horn.
Well, I mean, I can just say, there's not really anything that I've discovered that. Oh, well, you know what? I guess I'll say this. Maybe the reality, how real spiritual warfare is, not from like it. Like you think like as like a Protestant or something, you think like spiritual warfare is like, oh, like somebody's like they're like, I don't know, kind of like sad, or like they're struggling with their emotions or something. Oh, spiritual warfare, I feel depressed or something. Like, but that's not the case. I've got buddies that have that were inquiring at the same time as me, that have literally experienced like just about physical manifestations of the demonic. I mean, like you can see once you step into and you start journeying into the true church, the demons are angry, like that, like things will happen. Like just prior to this, we pushed this out a little bit because I was picking up my father-in-law from the hospital that had heart failure. I mean, it's just back to back to back, like not anywhere near close to a coincidence. So I mean, I think maybe people being granted, I was prepped for all of that by priests prior to even making the determination, or making the public announcement that I was going to become Orthodox or journey into the Orthodox Church, to expect very intense spiritual warfare. So I think that's something that a lot of people need to know. I spoke to a young man who is I get you were saying this, Luigi, you get DMs from people that are interested in Orthodoxy. The same thing here. Ever since the announcement video, I've been getting emails and DMs from people who are interested, maybe Protestants that used to watch my channel, and now they're getting convinced or otherwise, so they'll just reach out to me. But I was speaking to somebody who is they were clergy, a Protestant clergyman, and they were stepping away from their position at the church to become Orthodox. And we're kind of chatting back and forth. And he was like, what are some things I need to expect? I'm like, real spiritual warfare. Like real. Like it's gonna be real. It's not gonna be like, oh, things are stressful. No, like things are gonna happen that you're not going to be able to explain. And when you try to explain them to any like normal, sane person, they're gonna say, okay, yeah, whatever. Go ahead, cuckoo head or whatever. So it gets real. Like my buddy who I'll give you one example. It'll sound like kind of unbelievable, but it's or I'll keep it vague. Anyway, he had a real experience that ended up he called me at like 7 a.m. in the morning, like straight up weeping because of what he had experienced. And I said, well, dude, it's real now. Like that's confirmation for you. Like as terrifying as that sounds, that's confirmation. And you were just mentioning video games. When you're walking in the right direction, the enemies start to pop up. So I think for people that are interested in Orthodoxy, they got to know, you journey towards Christ, you're really gonna have to pick up your cross. But I think overall, all things considered, it is an honor to suffer in any way for the sake of Christ and his church. So I think it's beautiful. I think it's necessary for my salvation as well.
Ben, things you wish you
Yeah,
knew about
for me,
Orthodoxy
the biggest
before.
thing. Yeah, the biggest thing for me is that the intellect is insufficient. You know, and that's kind of turned into a meme, you know, from a lot of the Westerners on X. You know, it's like the Saint Augustine, you know, thunk too hard, and you know now we have gay blessings. But it's like, yeah, that, but unironically, you know, I would say that the intellect is what got me in the Orthodox Church. You know, it was intellectual arguments. But what keeps me in the Orthodox Church is the lives of the saints. And actually, my wife is way better at this than I am. My wife just devours the writings of the modern saints specifically. She loves Saint Paisios. She reads the Councils series from him, and is you know, I teach her tons of stuff about church history, and she tells me stuff about, you know, Saint Paisios and his writings in the Council series. So I would say that is what keeps me in the Orthodox Church. And you know, when you come into the Orthodox Church, it's probably because of intellectual arguments, but you need to start reading the lives of the saints, you know, the lives of the Desert Fathers, and read about these recent saints, you know, Saint John of Shanghai, you know, obviously Father Seraphim Rose. So yeah, that's what I would say.
It gives you context for suffering. That's the other fullness of it, because oftentimes we'll fall into that whole, like, I'm suffering, which is true. We all suffer in our own ways. It's all personal. But at the same time, it's like, what are you suffering? Oftentimes it's like, oh, I stubbed my toe. Ah, Lord, help me, Lord. And then you read those lives, you're saying, it's like, actually, okay, fine, I'm a schmuck, I should just shut up. I should just, like, there's, you know, Saint Mary of Egypt is, like, you know, being torched out in the desert. Like, I'm okay. I'm doing pretty good, all things considered. Sorry, Matt, go ahead.
You know, when you first asked the question, the first thought that I had was what you said, basically suffering, and what Cleave said, the suffering, the process, the realization that when you begin making moves toward the church, that you are inviting, you're volunteering in a spiritual war, and if you're not aware of that, you're going to be aware of it very, very quickly. Which can be frustrating, demoralizing. Your faith is going to be tested tremendously very early on. So I was going to say that, and then he said that, so I was like, okay, let me think. What else could I say? And then Luigi said the next thing that I was going to say, which is the tendency to intellectualize everything, and you know, you think your way into the church. I think this is the way a lot of, especially in this current age, I think this is the way a lot of young men have found the church, is thinking their way into the church. Fortunately for us, there's a long and storied history of that. That's not a new phenomenon at all. And when as you're entering the church, there's a very real sense in which it sounds so corny to say this, but I mean it in a different way that I meant it when I heard Protestants say this in the past, which is you're joining a family. You're entering into the history of a defined people. You could think of this, and maybe the easiest thing would be to think of it in more like ethnic terms, even though I'm not saying that that's what it is, but this is kind of the associations the modern mind has for it, that you're entering into a historical tradition where you can look back and read these stories of people, and they're not just ancient people. Oh yeah, that guy was a Christian, that was a father of the church, and he wrote some interesting stuff, but I'm gonna, you know, look at him with a really critical mind. No, like, this is you are being adopted into this family, and you get to claim that history as your own history. Now you're volunteering into this this lineage of people. And so yeah, it's very easy for it to be early on, especially I think, is for it to be a very intellectual thing, something that you're trying to hammer out all of the, what are the right things to think, and that it's important to think the right things, and it's important to not think the wrong things, but you also just need to start doing it. And then also, as Luigi said, you know, I maybe this would be the thing for me. It's sort of tangential to what he said, but like, my wife has absolutely put me to shame I'm the one with the whole history of been a Christian, a devout Christian my entire life, memorized tons and tons of Bible verses, know all the apologetic arguments, spent all my life in that world. And when it comes to just the simple day-to-day devotion and practice and attendance and participation in the parish, she has left me behind ages ago, and I will never catch up to her.
Shout out to Amy Erickson, who's in the chat. Gentlemen, I know, Cleave, thank you so much for coming in, man. I know you had a full day. Anyone who wants to leave it, anyone who wants to stick around, I don't know, Matt, if you want to stick around for a little bit, I'll read out some super chats, or Ben. And if you want to jump off and get back to your life, that's completely understandable. Just let the people know where they can find you and get a hold of your work. And again, gentlemen, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Cleave, we'll start
absolutely.
with
If
you.
you want, yeah, if you want to find my channel, just type in Cleave to Antiquity on YouTube, and then also the same thing on X. Those are 2 platforms I have right now. I might bridge over to TikTok sometime soon. I don't know. We'll see. Whenever I feel energetic enough to make shorts again.
Ben?
Yeah. At Real Ben Luigi on all platforms, primarily X, Instagram, then starting my YouTube, TikTok, and then also Rumble. Those are the 5 platforms I'm on, if that's 5, I think. And yeah, like I said, the beginning of the stream, I'm going to be starting a live show up here in December. So especially go and subscribe to my YouTube.
And of course, Mr. Matthew Erickson.
Primarily Twitter and Kick, and then also YouTube. I upload my streams to YouTube for as long as it will allow. And the podcast, any podcatcher, I think it's out there. The podcast is called Kingpilled. The show is the Astrolabe, and it's generally daily, Monday through Friday. It's a several-hour live stream, and it's primarily politics and culture focused. But I am Orthodox and do draw on the Orthodox worldview as I am analyzing and interpreting and understanding everything that's going on. So Kingpilled is, just look for Kingpilled, and you'll find me on Twitter, YouTube, and Kick, and all the podcasts.
Matt, can you stick around for a little bit longer?
I'll hang out.
We'll do a little. Ben, anyone else? If you guys you want to get back to your life, I totally understand. And again, thank you so much for coming on.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Ben. Well, reach out.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Appreciate it,
Great
Ben.
to meet you
God
guys.
bless.
Both Bens. Thank you. And now there is 2. Hang on, let's get this right. Oh, hey man, it's been a
Howdy.
bit.
It's
been a bit since we did it. Well, at least a month or so. Let's get to some super chats. Time zones be crazy up here from random username. We read you up before. Yes, they do be crazy. Queerdsy says we need some Christian social nationalism. Hail tier. Well, I don't know. I think if you're embracing the right Christianity, you won't really need the socialism part, really. But that's just my opinion. What do you think about that, Matt?
Yeah, I would say I know who this is. You know who this is as well.
Yeah.
It is yes. Socially nationalist is I would say that Christian praxis properly. Were I to conceive of the proper Christian nation, properly oriented under the church, it would have many characteristics that would likely be described in the political sphere as socially nationalists.
Well, I mean, we can just look at Russia. Russia's a Christian nationalist country, at least on paper. So there are models out here. We got big $10 from the man himself on the screen. Give the man some money and sub to his channel. Many big things on the way. This is true. Many big things on the way. Like, subscribe, and share. And send me your money, of course, folks. We're almost at that goal. Almost at the goal. So I mean, I'll just do a goal, anyways. We'll call it the goal because I've gotten some private super chats as well. So appreciate that. Send over on Streamlabs as well. We'll keep it going for a little longer. So I do appreciate all the attention. The growth has been amazing this past month. Funny that, eh? You spend a whole year trying to in the doldrums in YouTube jail essentially, and then all of a sudden it lifts. It's like you start doing a Christian show or Orthodox Christian show targeted towards Orthodox Christians and pray a lot to God, and then things get better. So
You
Maybe
shot
those
right
prosperity-
past me on YouTube subscribers.
Yeah, how does it
You gotta
feel,
kill the bit.
Matt? How does it feel, Matt?
You know, I just the only reason it happened is just because I don't use YouTube anymore. I've left YouTube for you.
This is true. This is true. You're on Kick now. You're dwarfing me on Kick, so you can hang your hat on that. And we don't talk about Twitter numbers. Twitter numbers don't count. Totally different platform. Totally different thing. We don't talk. We don't
Right.
discuss Twitter numbers. Okay?
Right.
So, you can follow me on X as well, folks. So we can start that. But yes, I am at least one ahead of you, Matt. Now I'm chasing Buck.
You're quite a
We're gonna
few
leave
ahead
Buck
of me
in the
now.
dust. We're gonna leave Buck in the dust, and then onwards and onwards. Who next? Jay Dyer. I mean, we'll just the sky's the
Oh
limit,
yeah, you're
so.
going for the crown now.
Well, we start small and we build. So we'll get to where we're going to go. God will give what he wants. Because I'll probably not, because I'll be really insufferable if I hit 100,000 subs. Imagine how annoying I am now. We got $20. My goodness, from RNC99 was going to give this to Matt earlier, but remembered he wears shorts.
Proud shorts wear. I'm trying to find the right pair of shorts. I haven't found the right ones just yet. But
Very proud. Yeah. In the month of June, constantly in the Erickson household. Every time Matt shows up, yeah.
I got to find the ones that have the right pockets because I also am a large phone user. I've got the iPhone, the Pro Max, the really big one. So I got to make sure that the pockets are large enough to fit it in. So I got to go for the shorts with the deep pockets.
Right. Well, next year for
looking
Halloween,
for deep pockets in a lot of ways.
You can go as a float next year for Halloween there, Matt. Yeah. By the way, I saw the pictures of Eastwood as a combine driver.
Harvester,
Very cute. Yeah, very cute. My daughter went as a vampire. I don't know where she's getting this stuff from. I basically had to tell my wife, I'm like, so next time you talk to Father John, like X-nay on the Halloween day. Like just don't mention it. Just pretend like it never happened. Quirtsy again with $5 Canadian right now. Right, but how many uncomfortably sexualized text-to-speech AI chatbots can fit on the head of the pin? As a mystic of my folk, spiritual warfare sucks. Oh, yeah.
That is for those who don't know, that's a reference to my earlier stream. I tried to so I was using for the Streamlabs the little robot that reads off the tips when they come through on Streamlabs. I was using Daniel, the German guy, but it got tiresome. I was having to reread them because it would be mispronounced and everything. So I switched it to just looking for a generic, just American accent. So I picked the guy named Justin. And apparently the guy named Justin is not a guy at all. It's actually a very... did you ever watch Bob's Burgers?
Yeah.
Louise's voice on Bob's Burgers. It's the voice is kind of reminiscent of that. It's like if Louise from Bob's Burgers was an anime VTuber or something like that. And so I forgot to switch it. I happened on the last show and I forgot to switch it before today's show. So the usual suspects were tormenting me by having overly sexualized messages read by this really, really creepy little girl voice.
So the gender reveal party for your AI chatbot would be like,
Yeah. Someone said it's supposed to be a little boy, actually. It's like a little boy's voice. And that's
even more spooky.
The voice is going to be changed.
Okay. Michael Gabriel Fortino, $9.99. Great talk. God willing, one day America will be Orthodox. Well, I mean, look, it has been prophesized. It has been prophesized by many greater men than Matt and I will ever be. And I don't mean that as a pejorative. It's just it's going to happen. I believe the whole West will one day be Orthodox in one way, shape, or form. It's just the growing pains to get there. It's interesting, you distill these things down to the personal because you see it's we talked about fractals before, and it's the micro and the meta, right? How we experience life. It's like breath. So you can see it working through your life, and you can see it out in the world. And quite often, if you do an audit on your life, you start to see how these things get connected. Especially if you don't play the whole like, oh, I wish I had done something differently. It's like, well, look, you got to appreciate where you're at now. And if right now kind of sucks, then make it better. But realize that every single point of your life had to be done that way to get you to that point, even to get to that point of realizing that your life sucks. And there's now we can repent, which is do the 180. We can change, return, repent, redeem. These things can. It's the easy, hard thing to do, but you need the right church, you need the right phronema, you need the right worldview, you need the right inputs in order to make those changes and then sort of benefit from the outputs.
There's something that I didn't bring it up earlier just because it was too complicated. There's a thing I just asked Grok this because kind of populate my head with some thoughts here. In traditional in like biblical symbology, the east is like the altar is faced toward the east. When you set up your prayer corner in your house, you want to, as best as you can, you want to direct it toward the east so that you're praying to the east, because the east is where God comes from. God comes, his throne is to the east. And interestingly, there was also like the man of the north, or the prince of the north, is kind of like where the evils come from the north. But then I was thinking about this in symbolic terms, I suppose. The West. What is the West symbolically? It's I don't want to take this too literally, as in like the West is the direction of the Antichrist. The West is the evil place, but the West is also the opposite of the East. And I wouldn't use this as an argument to say that Orthodoxy is the true church because it is Eastern, and that the West is inherently evil because it is Western. But this is an idea that I've been kind of clanging around in my head lately, and I need to listen to people who are smarter than me weigh in on it. But thinking about that in prophetic terms of, perhaps it's like the West is the final frontier, sort of, because also the East is not, there's plenty of issues with, if you're thinking more broadly, globally, universally like this, there's plenty of issues to the East as well. Godless communism and long millennia of demon worship and everything. So it's not like everything East good, everything West bad. I wouldn't say that at all. But there's just something to that the East, we pray to the East. The sun rises in the East, and then we have the West, and it's been known as the West, and it's kind of like the East is the old world, the West is the new world, and the church is traveling to the West, and then this gets you into all sorts of arcane, esoteric, revisionist history about what really happened in the Americas in the past, before the flood. How far proliferated were people really? You have Japheth to the northwest, and you have Ham to the south, and then there's like the rumor that I think it was Shem and Japheth were firstborn, but they were twins, so they each got half of the birthright. So they each, when the world was divided after the flood, they each got, what would it be, 1.5 was their territory. So Japheth is like the northwest, and Shem is. There's all these sorts of things have been clanging around in my head lately, and I want to, maybe I have to do a deep dive on this myself, or hopefully somebody else will take it and run with it and give us something interesting out of that.
Yeah, so we mentioned Tartaria.
Oh yeah.
I think when you get into there's always like a strange, like almost desire for revisionism, because we realize that there's lies, right? Like I think what's dawning on people is that evolution is bunk, and the more and more people actually start to question it, the more they realize how bunk it is, even to the point where now evolutionists are changing their tune. Now, before it used to be like add a few million years or billion years on top of it to make it work. Now they're like, oh no, actually we need this to happen like really fast. Made by Jim Bob is doing great work on that, and so go check out his debates on with evolutionists. He just debated evolutionists, PhD, whatever, and Jim Bob wiped the floor with him because he's just asking simple questions within the frame. Like, okay, well then, how do you just grant yourself species? How do you just grant yourself whole categories like of proto being? When does that proto being magically become, when does the liver become a functioning liver? And how did the organism live with a non-functioning liver that was developing into a liver over time? Like, these are the questions that we all need to know. So if you're adding millions and billions of years on top of it, and game theory just kind of blows that out of the water too, saying like fail states are the most common thing in the world. So all your proto livers would just lead to a fail state. They'd have to basically just magically create a liver overnight in one generation for this thing to work.
What you do is you magically create an extra billion years further back that just allows for the time for all those fail states.
Right, exactly.
When in doubt, just extend the timeline back and just fit whatever you need to in that. It's just like the grab bag, just toss everything into it.
Right, exactly, yeah. And it's just, it just happens. Like, even the will to survive, right? Like a natural will. We just grant it. Just, microorganism just has the will to proliferate itself somehow. We don't know how, right? We don't even get into trees and all the rest of the fauna. But so as that started to collapse, it's interesting to me because so right now the big push for social media controls for under 15s that's happening in Australia, that was the Trojan horse that they did in Britain as well. We got to protect the youth, right? Because they're all committing S-side and doing horrible things, and all this stuff is destroying them. And I look back on it and it's like, well, the seed of nihilism is really in things like evolution. Like, we can go back as far into the Enlightenment as you want, but evolution just basically posits that we're nothing, and that not just that we come from nothing and we're evolved into a state, but essentially, if you follow the track, the entailment is that we'll evolve into something else that's not us. So everything we talk about human rights and human values and morality and all this, it's just like, well, that's just something to amuse ourselves while we're here temporarily. Not just you, me, Matt, the people that are Jason and Matt, born in the living in the 21st century. It's like, no, humanity as a whole, check back on us in a million years, won't be human anymore.
And in this sense, the Yuval Noah Hararis and the and even, I dare I say, the Nick Lands of the world are almost the most honest about this, where they actually have a maybe not Nick Land quite as much, but even a little bit. They have a less of an appreciation for humanity, would perhaps be the way to say it. They are expecting humanity to go, and they're planning for, to them, humanity is more of sort of a happenstance, or it's a thing that's here for a period of time, but eventually something is going to evolve beyond humanity. And for Nick Land, that would be capital. I think Nick Land is probably less off the deep end than Harari,
which is an odd thing to say about Nick Land, but yeah,
right. But like Nick Land has said, like nothing human is going to survive the next epoch, or I don't remember what term he used, but he foresees capital emerging out of as this emergent phenomenon that uses humanity to generate itself, and then leaves humanity behind and doesn't need humanity anymore. Harari is basically like, well, we're going to evolve some sort of super intelligence that humanity is the things that make humanity human in the eyes of someone like Harari are just like impediments. They're things to engineer out and move beyond, even if that means eliminating humanity, because that's fine, because humanity is just a means to an end.
Just a new goal set up on YouTube for super chats. Hit 10 super chats in 30 minutes, folks, and I will join the goal club. I think the number set by David Patrick Harry was over basically 45 seconds, 47 seconds. I can't remember. It was DPH or made by Jim Bob. Either way, I will stun you all with being able to say goal for a full minute. As I probably lose an eyeball, but hit the goal and we'll see how it happens. Matt will keep me honest. So another $5 Canadian.
If you want to see Jason pop an eyeball out.
Hey, that's entertainment. $5 from Quirtsy. To be fair, most people I know are fail states. Evolution confirmed. The great unconformity is a 1.5 billion year record gap. There's where a lot's happened. Yeah, well, I mean, look, you come down to Australia and meet the cultural zeitgeist here, and it is a foil
you
for
may
Jim
turn
Bob's
into Yuval Noah
argument.
Harari.
Right, it's a foil for Jim Bob's argument. It's like I follow along. I'm like, but have you seen what's going on down here? Like, have you been here? Have you been? I'm just talking about the white people. I'm not even talking about anybody else. I'm talking about the whites.
Yeah, right. You're not even getting into the abos.
Woo! God dang. But is it working? Are they sending money? Keep going.
Last time I did that was with Zen tens. This time it was with rogues. Or sorry, it was Alp tens. This time it was with rogue tens.
You've outgrown the Zins. My goodness. I don't know. Have you told Tucker Carlson about this? Is he approving of it? I'm not sure. Because we all know you're on the payroll, Matt. So, yeah.
He needs to get out of India.
You mentioned some big news. Tomorrow, I got Jim Jatras and Tom Luongo coming together on the stream to talk about all roads leading to London and why all roads lead to London. So we'll be back tomorrow. I believe it's 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is the start time.
So
and
I
then
know
next
next week I
week
need to have the lab done because I'm not missing that live experience.
Exactly. I've been onboarding Jim for like the last year about all this, and he's like, it's Jim, so he's gonna be like, right. So, and him and Tom know each other, and they like each other. So let's put those two men in the room, and I'm just gonna back off. Gen X versus Boomer, and I'm just gonna sit there with my popcorn.
You're not gonna get a word in edgewise.
Not even gonna try. Not even gonna try. Just gonna read out super chats. Gonna make money. That's what I'm gonna be doing. $5 from Amy Erickson. Pay the man so he can turn off the stupid ads telling me my kid is autistic. I can't turn them off.
She doesn't need the ads to tell her that. She just needs to look at her husband.
Does your child have autism? Yes. Now what?
He built a combine harvester for Christmas. He drew a picture today. Well, I think she was taking a shower or something like that. And he drew a picture of like a farm field. It was black currants, and he drew a black currant harvester. And he had all the little dots there, and it had its like spout that it was pushing the harvested crops out. And he was explaining to me all the different components of it and everything. And the dude knows more about heavy machinery than I do. And I worked at a heavy machinery dealership for a few years.
Well, again, the tisms, it's inheritable, So, sorry, I'm just looking at the Streamlabs. Apparently, Quirdsy is asking if I can read out anything from over there. I don't see anything from there, my friend. So I don't know. I will check PayPal and see if it comes up there. But either way, let me know, Quirdsy. You can send me a DM, and I'll read it out if I can't see it over on these sites. So. $5 from RNC99. $5. Jason, when are you going to move to the greatest country on earth? I'm all moved out, man. I did all my moves. I did all my moves when I did from Canada to Australia. I'm moved out. I'll come visit. We've talked. Matt and I have talked about this. Maybe getting some funds together to ship my broken ass over to America for a visit sometime next year. My mom just was visiting, so my daughter's now wants to get to Canada, but she wants to go when there's snow, and I don't know why. Like, no daughter of mine, out of this house. We left the snow. What are you talking about? But I get it. $19 from Shoreline Skirt, man. Thank you so much. One of the best supporters of the show over the past little bit. Appreciate you, Shoreline. I had something going with something. Oh yeah, next week on Meet the Blessed, we're going to have a meeting of cultural Orthodox Christians. So made by Jim Bob, Chase Haggard, and Dirt Poor Robbins. So I haven't got confirmation, but there may or may not be a jam session, folks. So tag that one.
That's what I've been listening. Because that would, if that happens, I was going to say I'll be there tomorrow evening, but it's going to be kind of weird listening to Tom Luongo at 1X, because I usually listen to Tom at like 2 1/4, and which just listening to Tom absolutely blow his stack about the British at 2.25 is just he sounds even just completely deranged. He's just like screeching and ranting and raving, and then I'll slow it down to 1x, and I'm like, oh, he actually is kind of like he's worked up, but he doesn't sound like he did. But a jam sesh with Chase and Jim Bob and Dirt Poor Robbins, like I'm gonna have to listen to that at 1x. So I have to make it live for that one as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is the intent for this series, for this panel series, is to get orthodoxy in all things. Of course, everyone gets attracted to the politics and all the rest of it, and that's good. But I want to be able to present it as many different ways as possible, and have a Orthodox show made by Orthodox people, with the intent to entertain Orthodox people themselves or inquirers. But even though you don't have to be Orthodox to enjoy the show. You can enjoy the show on many different levels. So that's the intent, and so far so good. Numbers have been good. I have beat Matthew Erickson over on YouTube, which is the only numbers that actually matter. Anyways, I don't even know what this kick thing is. I post a kick just because I don't make Matt feel lonely. I feel like I gotta be there too.
Yeah, Asmongold's not enough. I need you too.
Well, I'm drawing people in. I'm drawing them to you. That's my gift. I'm drawing it for Asmongold. Hey, man, I haven't gotten any thanks for Asmongold for telling many people in the dissident right sphere for over a year that, hey, you should pay attention to this kid. No thanks.
He's not that far from me either.
You're the only person who
lives an hour away from me.
That was probably, yeah. I thought he was in Chicago for the dumbest reason for a long time. $2 from Quersy. Return to snow monkey syrup sucking sounds. Yes, we all true Canadians suck up from the tree, eh? We go right to the teat. We bypass the, what do you got? A little bottle? Oh, that's cute. No, I got a maple in my backyard. I just crack her open and just suck right on the tree, eh? That's how real Canadians do it. The tree tit, yeah. Oh, mama tree, give me some. Give your baby bird some sweet syrup, eh? Just lay it on me.
That kind of reminds me of the tweet, the legendary tweet where he said something about like people don't like that they like accuse Christianity of being globalist or something like that. And he's like, yeah, of course my God runs the universe. What kind of low rent forest demon are you worshiping?
Organized Insanity says maple syrup prices are ridiculous these days. Going back to Canadian stuff. Rob Ford, the Premier of Ontario, is now making threats saying, Trump, if I'm going to raise auto prices and stuff and whatever. This is the same guy who tried to ban American alcohol, like Crown Royal in Canada, or whatever. And I looked at it, I'm like, I have a few thoughts on it, but primarily it's like, yo, dude, no one can afford things right now. So you making something that people can't generally afford right now more expensive isn't the own you think it is. It's like, if I can't afford a Maserati or a new car because I can't afford a new car because I got like bills and groceries to pay, and then you're threatening to make the thing I can't afford more expensive, my response is like, oh, okay, shit. Oh, fuck.
I saw something I read something on my show the other. Oh, it was Peter St. Onge. He said that Canada has the wage levels of West Virginia with the cost of living of San Francisco. That's insane. That's like that's like like Canada's not going to exist as a polity in like 20 years. It doesn't. Nobody's going to afford to live. You're going to have mass famines.
Also, the other little fun thing for Rob Ford is that he's challenging Trump,
Doug Ford,
saying he's going to raise. Sorry, Doug Ford. Rob was his brother. He's much more fun, crack smoking brother. But the thing with Doug is that he's threatening Trump to put tariffs on American automotive factories. Like the majority of factories in Ontario are American made and owned cars, like GM, Ford, whatever. I'm pretty sure Trump could just call up the CEOs of those companies and go, look, we're going to make you a deal. Just close down all your plants and we'll make it okay for you. And they could just reshore all those plants, which is kind of the direction Trump is going with anyways. If he doesn't take Canada completely, then he's just going to reshore all that industry back to the United States, which would put all those people out of jobs in Ontario. Good job, Doug. Fantastic. Like, uh, here's something you can talk about. We talked a little bit of authority, but oftentimes it comes down to leverage. You know, how much leverage do you have in the world? And what's increasingly being shown with the Trump policy, and whether they work out long term, sure, whatever. But Trump is using leverage for the first time. An American president hasn't used leverage like this before. Like, it was always unilateral, the coalition of the willing, all this other, you know, collectivist horse. I'm trying not to swear, you know, stuff. And Trump's just like, nah, I don't care about coalitions. We're just going to do this thing. Venezuela's screwed. And what are you going to do about it? Because we're going to take their energy and drive the energy prices down. And if you're going to wage war against Russia, that's the way you do it, by the way. You want to force Russia to the negotiating table, drop the price of oil down from 70 bucks a barrel or whatever it's hanging at down to like 20. Suddenly Russia will be very interested in negotiating. Like, at a minute. What? And everyone's freaking out. Oh, it's like, why do you care about Venezuela?
You should make sure you bring this up tomorrow. If they don't do it organically, make sure you bring this up tomorrow with Tom and Jim, especially with Tom, and have him talk about both Venezuela and Canada and the role that Canada is playing under Mark Carney as essentially it's sort of like the Ukraine to Canada is the United States as Ukraine is to Russia. It's an outpost that's there to subvert and compromise the territorial integrity of the United States and the monetary integrity of the United States, because with the full move over to SOFR, what Mark Carney is doing is effectively serving as an outpost for for Europe, for the Crown, Europe, however you want, Davos, whatever, to have an alternative source of accessing U.S. dollars without having to go to the Fed directly. It's an alternative way. So Canada is engaged in open hostilities with the United States. There was this ad, the $75 million ad that they ran with a doctored quote of Ronald Reagan, ostensibly opposing the use of tariffs and saying this is un-American. The government of Ontario paid for this ad and ran this ad, essentially interfering in American elections. And Trump's like, all right, trade negotiations are off the table. And for Canada, like, you got to think of Canada in like two different ways. There's the Canadian, the Canadian ruling class, which has total and complete contempt for Canada and Canadians. And they just see it as in a utilitarian sense, as a way to wage war, as an outpost of the old colonial European empire, that it's a way to wage war against the United States. Then there's Canada itself, the actual Canadians, the actual blood and soil of the people and the nation. And the latter is actually not that far removed from America and from Americans. There's obviously a reason why they're Canadians and we're Americans, and but it's the ruling class of Canada, the people who are actually controlling Canadian institutions, that are they're intentionally engaging in these hostilities with the United States. Canada is almost the ruling class of Canada is almost more hostile to the United States perhaps than Mexico, if we're talking here on the Northern American continent. But then the people of Canada they cannot survive a world where Trump plays hardball with Canada. They're not going to. It's going to bankrupt them. It's going to impoverish them. It's going to drive them into famine. They cannot survive that. They're being used as pawns in this game. The United States can be just fine and dandy without like pausing trade negotiations with Canada, whatever. We can replace that easily. Canada's not the only place that we're going to go to get whatever we're getting from Canada. Canada driving trade negotiations to be paused and be treated as a hostile actor in them is going to be devastating for the future of Canada. It's abundantly clear that anybody who has a modicum of political power or influence in Canada now is completely and wholly beholden to the primary enemy, which is this, whatever you want to call them. Luongo calls them the high table. What was it?
City of London. Yeah, sure.
City of London. Yeah. Adam Curry calls it the North Sea Nexus, which is pretty good. Listening to Adam Curry talk to Tom Luongo, by the way, was surreal. That was fun to listen to.
Well, go ahead. Me talking to Tom Luongo about like what, last year? Or?
No, Adam
Sorry,
Curry.
Oh, Adam Curry. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. He
Um,
Luongo interviewed him a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing is that this was a big eye opener for me last year. I started talking to Stormy, and I've been tracking a few things and asking questions. And then once I did that, I looked into Tom's work, and then that was like, yeah, here it is. Because my issue was always, look, we're looking at it. Even this stuff that you did so brilliantly on the PayPal mafia and all the rest of it. It's like, okay, there's that layer. So there's us, and then there's like this layer above us, right? Like the politicians, let's say, the assumed elites, and then there's people behind them. There's the networks, right, who are doing other things, and that was a kind of the PayPal mafia layer. And then I was like, well, hang on, there's got to be something bigger than that, because like there's layers to this stuff. And yet, you've been told, don't look at the Illuminati, right? Don't think of the Illuminati, secret societies and stuff like that. But you're like, well, there's Fabian societies and all these other societies, and that the WEF and Davos is just a forward-facing, unapologetic secret society that's operating in the public. So who's behind all this? And then you kind of get that's why I call it the Shadow Empire, because I've been convinced that that the British Empire didn't collapse in 1945. It just went to the background. And the City of London, or let's say the trade network, or whatever you want to call it, that's still alive and well, and has been controlling American finance and the Western civilization through the European Union and other things for this entire time. It's been a 400-year buildup, and now we're seeing that collapse. So what we're seeing is not the collapse of the West or civilization or all the rest of it in entirety. No, we're finally seeing the last-ditch collapse of the British Empire, which is why, if you look at what's going on in the UK right now, they're looking like a dead empire. They're doing all the dead empire stuff. Complete lockdowns on people, harassing people on the street, importing everyone to the kind of just distraction, and rip the copper from the walls. To the point, though, Matt, and I'll just tag this into the Canadian thing because it had me thinking about this. Before 1970, that sort of Bob and Doug Mackenzie, hey, eating back bacon, drinking beer, watching the hockey game, that didn't really exist. I'm not saying those people didn't exist, but as a cultural identity, that didn't exist. You go back a little bit further back, it's very British. In fact, I think this is kind of the big smokescreen. It started in World War I when my Ukrainian side of the family moved over, and many Europeans, and continued after World War II, and suddenly the country became much more European, right? Of all mixes. That was the smokescreen. The Britishness of Canada moved to the back. The people who created Canada, the real financiers of Canada, were all Scottish bankers. If you go to Westmount, which is the highest concentration of wealth in all of Canada, or at least was historically, all the big names who live at the very top of the hill, all Scottish. And then you get to then you kind of see like sedimentary layers, and the Jews are sort of like in the upper middle to lower third, right? But because they have a presence there too. But at the start, it was all Scottish bankers, and so that big giant sort of Dominion of Canada, very very British, kind of went to the background, and then suddenly you got a very mixed European, and then the only kind of Britishness you're allowed to have in Canada was the Bob and Doug, or the Tom, the Greens and so that keep your stick on the ice, kind of Canadian, folksy almost. Bob, a lot of their politicians kind of incorporate that if they're not French. So again, it's that it's that hiding it. Suddenly there was this big sort of like British what? No, there's just silly people like watch Monty Python, whatever, right? But no, it's there. They're still there. All the infrastructure's there. That didn't go anywhere. All the names are still there. All the legacy families, all the money's still there. But now it's starting to change. And
Luongo had a really good interview a couple months ago. I don't know if you heard this one where he talked. It was with Matt Ehret and Dexter White. So it was the three of them. And Matt has done a ton of deep digging. It always weirds me out every time I'm listening to Tom and he says Matt Ehret, because it sounds very much like he's going to say Matt Erickson. I'm like, wait, what? Oh, Matt Ehret. That's right.
Talk to the people, man. I'll be right back.
Okay. Yeah. So he he did a lot of good digging into or outlining how much of America or Canadian politics has been just completely infested with organized crime. So this is like a thing. I guess while I got you guys here, I will rant at you with my thing I've been thinking about lately, which is that I've talked about this on my show a little bit. I think the British versus English distinction is very useful here. That there's the English people, there's the history of the English people, and then there's this British identity that's kind of an amalgamation, and it became known as the British Empire, and it was there's a lot of English people who are present in the leadership of the British Empire, but what it became ultimately was not a you think of it as the British Empire, but it's not necessarily being governed or run by, or the leadership positions populated by English people. There's a lot of continental influence in there. There's a lot of Jewish influence in there, and it was a mercantile empire. This was the nature of the birth of this imperial structure was mercantile. And so what are the things that are inherent to a mercantile structure like that? You've got the trade. So then you have free trade, and the premise of free trade as it was constructed is you've got the imperial homeland, and then you have all of these different outposts. These outposts bring all of the raw materials, the raw goods. We go out and we bring those, and we set up these trade arrangements where they send all their raw goods to us. We refine them and send them back out again. Because you also have the industrial revolution, and you've got, whether you're talking about the actual British Isles themselves or even the continent, it is relatively resource scarce compared to Africa or South America or North America or even Asia. It's relatively resource scarce. So for them, it makes a lot of economic sense to build up your industry here and then enforce with your navy and your control of the sea lanes and all of the shipping arrangements and relationships, trade relationships, to extract. It's an extractive empire that pulls in all of the raw materials, refines them, and then sells back the products to the people who harvest them in the first place. This is the structure of the British Empire. So it lends itself to being the types of people who are going to establish themselves within it and then move up within that hierarchy are going to be the people who specialize in the trades that are not the trades or the professions that are most overrepresented within that. So it's going to be financialized professions, and it's also going to be anything related to shipping and warehousing and the Navy. And it's like a specific type of military approach when you're primarily a naval empire. So the Jews are going to figure prominently within this because of their own lack of rootedness, the fact that they are a people who have insisted upon not assimilating into any other host country, but they try to fit into the nether regions between professions, between nations, they try to fill up that negative space. So if you have this global naval mercantile empire, well, of course the Jews are gonna insinuate themselves into that. But it's not just them. They had to insinuate themselves into something. That something had a cause for them to be insinuated into. So this is why I think reducing it to just the Jews is wrongheaded, because the Jews didn't have the power or the purchase or the sand in their pants to establish and control a global empire. That framework had to be there for them to insinuate themselves into. But then the people who built and constructed that framework, who were not necessarily Jewish, they had a reason to bring in these outsiders to come in and manipulate the relationships with all their different trade partners. So you can run all sorts of games with, when you have that third guy who's not you, but he's working with you, you can run games against someone else that you're negotiating against. So the actual mercantile imperial structure of the British Empire, founded on this premise of trade and resource extraction and industrialization in the home country and then shipping everything back out again, there's a natural relationship there between the leadership classes of the Europeans, both the continent and the British Isles, who are themselves French, Spanish, Italian, English, Dutch. There's lots of different ethnicities that are represented there. They rose to the ascendancy of the structure themselves and oversaw it in the name of the British Empire, even though there are all sorts of different ethnicities. And then as the Jews were kind of looking for a patron and were naturally a mercantile people who the things that they've always specialized in have been the sort of off limits trades, or the ones that are not as accepted and mainstreamed and normalized. Because if you don't have a soil to be rooted to, you have to specialize in something else. So that's how they get into banking, they get into shipping, they get into transport, they get into then all the different financialization things that emerge out of that. You get the development of stock markets, and they naturally glom onto that. But that doesn't make it inherently Jewish, and it doesn't mean the Jews are the ones who are inherently in control. You have the people who constructed that imperial frame to begin with and remain largely in power, who are almost exclusively Europeans. And I mean, by Europeans, I don't just mean like Europeans can be kind of a euphemism sometimes for the so-called Semitic peoples who are themselves hailing from Europe, but actual genuine Europeans with this other class of outsiders that kind of drift from people to people, but don't have anything that roots them to any particular land. It's a relationship that's emerged over centuries between them. So it's not properly the Jews and it's not properly the Europeans. It's an amalgamation of both of them. And I think British actually is a pretty useful term here, because it's an artificial identity sort of that's been constructed. I mean, you had the Britons, you have Britannia, like this is there was something to it to begin with, but it was the English people, but it's the British Empire. And I think that British is itself a collective term as distinct from the actual nationality.
Well, I mean, think about it, right? If you think about the Commonwealth, just in general, like I live in Australia, coming from Canada to Australia, right? The move is almost a parallel move. Now, obviously, Australians have a different way of speaking. They tend to be taller and more tanned, slightly more retarded, just slightly, just a little bit more retarded. It must be all the sun leaching in. But that all being said, it's like there's a commonality. There's a commonality between British people, even people of different nationalities who've accumulated themselves into the British Commonwealth. There's shared Britishisms, and it's not just Coronation Street, but it's that too. So it boils even down to, because what you're laying out here, maybe we can get into the JQ a little bit. And someone asked me, someone in the chat said, "Is this a Christian channel?" I'm like, yes. It's a Christian channel where we talk about things other than just Christianity all the time. Shocking. I know. You can have a Christian channel that talks about other things other than Christianity all the time. But we'll loop it around as well. Don't worry. Because it does get back to it. Nominalism and liberalism itself. I say the liberal frame is basically all ideologies that stem from a shared philosophies, and a few shared philosophies coming out of the Enlightenment. The big one is nominalism, right? Reducing everything down to materialism, and everything metaphysical is sort of just a byproduct of natural order, naturally occurring things. So the mind is not some sort of metaphysical claim. It's just biochemistry that coming out of the fat thing in your head, right? This becomes into evolution and all the rest of things we get. Nominalism makes absolute perfect sense to a seafaring mercantile empire. It reduces everything down to the material, to component parts. So if you're trying to say, well, we're going to sell rubber galoshes, right? Rubber boots. Well, then you're going to break it down to, where are we going to get the rubber from? How much does the rubber cost? How, who do we have to take over to get over the rubber trade? How much, you break all these things down to their component parts, because it's pure materialism. That's what you're selling. You buy, ship, and sell. And because you're an empire, oh, by the way, if the natives are uncooperative, we just deal with those people too, right? You're a storefront with an army and a navy. How nice. it makes sense to create a ideology or a framework that gives weight to that, not just on a storefront level, but your entire worldview becomes that. Everything is material. Everything's for sale. It's the free market. It's capitalism. It's even its corollary, which is often sub as communism. It's not even a different thing. It's two sides of the same coin. Because capitalism is how you generate the money, and communism is how you distribute it. It's literally the company and the union, the workers' union and the company it works for, or the industry it works for. All mem shows they both need each other. So all these ideologies all stem down to the fact that it was basically created from the British 400 years ago to make the operating system for a mercantile empire. If you want to get into the great turning events, for all our Gnostics in the chat, it's what the what do the Hindus say other than derpa derpa and make a mess, throw poo at each other. When they're not throwing poo at each other, they believe that this is the age that we've been living through, the age of the merchant, and this is going to give way to the age of the artist and all that kind of stuff. Great, cool. But there you go, right? Find whatever road you want to get to the same truth. It's all the same truth. You want to phrase it a different way? Have at you. But it's all pertaining to this liberal frame, and it's been set up as your operating reality because it benefits a mercantile empire. And if that mercantile empire is on its way out, then we get to have open questions of like, what's going to replace it?
And this is where the construction of the new empire that is going to be an American empire, just kind of by geographic necessity, is of a completely different character. It's not totally, big word alert, it's not completely orthogonal to the other one, because it actually is emerging as a response to the other one, or in rebellion to the other one, as we continue along down this dialectic train. So like the emergent American empire is going to be a dialectic response to the past collapsing so-called British empire. But it's that doesn't mean that it's inherently bad, or anyways, I'm just arguing with myself. It's going to have a completely different character. This is something that the ladies at Promethean Action have been really good on, talking about the distinct American system, like the Alexander Hamilton American system versus the British colonial system. You notice the way that Trump is going in and solving all of these different conflicts is he is using trade as a means of solving them, but then he's establishing these, particularly in Australia, he's establishing these as partnerships. So this is not the same. There's still obviously a stronger partner here. It's like a senior partner and a junior partner, but they're being set up legally and formally differently than the way that the British colonial system worked.
I'll bring it up with Jim tomorrow, hopefully. But one of the things that Jim said, and it's, people don't like it, but it's very true. And he's speaking specifically around peace deals with Russia, right? And saying that, look, the deal isn't worth the money. The deal isn't worth the paper it's written on. If they were propose a deal, because there's no trusting, right? America has, or the West has broken trust with Russia so many times, and now it's like, who's the guarantee, right? Or who's the guaranteer past Trump? So even if we say that Trump's being 100% legit and he's being forthright, and even if Vance agrees with him, and let's say Vance becomes the next president, okay, great, that kicks the can down a few years. But what happens if who takes over after Vance suddenly goes back to Russia and goes, actually, no, right? You can't have 20, 30, 40-year massive investment plans like opening up trade routes in the north and doing all that stuff with Exxon if you don't have a guarantee that can be substantiated over longer than 4 to 8 years or 12 years or whatever it ends up being. So I think this is what Trump's is kind of trying to do now, is substantiate these partnerships, as you're saying, in order to create some sort of long-lasting guarantee. Not that a future president couldn't just reverse everything, and because whatever, right? But if there are going to be future presidents, we can get into that conversation too. But you got to give, okay, this is what you got, right? These are the mechanisms you got. So let's enter into partnerships. And now as a partner, that's harder to break. Because now, as long as that partnership is mutually beneficial, even future presidents are going to go, well, yeah, but we can't screw with this now. Because as we know, with the deep state stuff, it's so intertwined that breaking any of this stuff can take decades, if not generations. I'm pretty sure they wanted to get rid of LIBOR for the last 200 years, but just couldn't for reasons. And now they did. Now that's the big sea change, because now America's in control of its actual currency. What can they do with that? Well, pretty much anything now, right? Like we're just getting started. Applies to many things.
And also, I've thought about this as well. When for instance, there's the whole the thing going on with India. India is basically serving as like this carve out for getting Russian oil into Europe via India, and causing complications there. And I think it's also, there's a tendency for the American audience to view either Russia or China as, they see them as more autocratic than the United States. So they just assume that Putin is the unambiguous head of the government and everything that happens flows from his will. Same with Xi. And that's not the case at all. They're both of them have very factionalized governments with lots of different interest groups that they have to sort of balance. And in many ways, they're very similar to Trump in that sense. They're perhaps a little more established in their power than he is, but not by a ton. They're just kind of a little further down the road that he is. And both of them have significant elements within their countries who are actively working against them, actively working to undermine them, particularly in cooperation with this old empire. And whether that's because of some sort of an ideological predisposition, or just because it's people who have been plugged into this teat that prints money for them, and they want to stay plugged into that, and they're going to do whatever is necessary to make that happen. It's kind of neither here nor there. Although there is a substantial difference when it comes to if you're negotiating with them and you're negotiating on the basis of trade. If they're not ideologically given over to this sort of a thing, but they're just wanting to make money, and right now they're attached to this big money printer that the United States left in Europe, and now that money printer is going away. Well, pretty soon when you're confronting, I don't know, total existential destruction on one hand, and hey, here's a pretty good deal on the other hand, then you might be willing to make that deal. Someone just has to make it worthwhile to you. So, and then there's two ways that you can make something worthwhile to someone. You can either make it really, really expensive to not partake in the deal, or you can make it really, really appealing to partake in the deal. So the carrot and the stick. So right now, I think like oil is a really big thing here. And Trump, in his 60 Minutes interview he just did, he kind of said something that I haven't totally plugged into the narrative, but I haven't seen a lot of people comment on this. He said one of the things they're doing on the energy front, he said this was his idea, that nobody else had thought of this, but as they're onshoring all of this, as they're building all these factories, they're building electrical generation capacity within every single factory, so that every single factory is generating its own electricity to power itself, and anything that's unused is getting offloaded back into the grid. So everyone has been like, well, how are they going to spin up all this? And he said this in the context of AI. So AI is not about the technology itself. It's about the grid. When they talk about the AI race, the AI arms race, and building up the AI technology, what they're talking about is the electrical grid. And they're building this up really rapidly. And actually, Bitcoin integrates into all of this in a very interesting way. But that's not all totally clear in my head just yet.
Well, because if you're going to sell something for investors, what's sexier? AI? Ooh. What can we do with AI? Well, it's the future. You're always selling the future. It's the future. Robots. Look at all these wonderful things we can create with AI. Or, hey, why don't you invest in the electrical grid?
Yes.
Well, the what?
Yeah.
The electric. It's so sexy. Look, it's the thing that we need to do all the other things. Yeah, I mean, sure.
Basically, the deal they're offering them is you can get your sexy AI thing by decentralizing the electrical grid, and then when they if they do decentralize that, that's, I mean, then they're actually going to have the capacity to be able to drive oil quite a bit lower, I think, when they do this, which is going to really start putting pressure on a lot of the financial interests that are in Russia that are the ones who are leaning on, because I get the sense that Putin wants this to be over as well, but he is beholden to interest within his country. Yeah, he's beholden to interest within his country where he has to keep maintaining it. But if those interests can be put into such a painful spot, and it's not Putin doing it, Putin's just doing what he's supposed to. He's continuing to prosecute the war. But oh, look at this, all the stuff that's happening, it's out of our control. All of a sudden, oil prices drop below $50 a gallon, and those Russian oil oligarchs are going to be clamoring for some sort of they're going to be forced to have to take some sort of a deal.
Yeah, Matt, I could keep you all night, but
I
know you just
my
did a
bladder is
show
exploding.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you so much, Matthew. We'll do this soon. We have maybe a possible date at the end of the month for a turn of a show.
Should be an interesting one.
Keep an eye out, folks. Keep an eye out, because why have a nice quiet life? Let's just do a Nick Fuentes friend or fed and
rain
enjoy
hate
that
down upon ourselves.
Enjoy that chat. I'm just going to turn I won't turn comments off. I'm just never going to look at the comments. I'm just gonna walk away from the comments section altogether. But keep an eye out, folks. That's going to be coming up soon. And of course, follow Matthew Erickson and all his fine work over on Kick. Maybe we can drag you over back to YouTube if YouTube gets its. It seems to be getting better. So we'll see. Other than that, thank you for all the super chats, folks. We hit a few goals. We hit a few goals. Kind of hit a few goals. I have to do the goal thing. I know you're about to pee yourself there, Matt. But this will be fast, because I'm gonna hit 2 minutes on the goal thing. Of course, right? Because
right.
Because yeah. Okay, hang on. Stopwatch. Okay. Go. That's bullshit. That's a slow clock. It's a slow clock. I don't like it. I'm gonna call some bullshit on that. Anyways, folks,
your audio disappeared after the first 2 or 3 seconds, so it just looked like you were just going.
Well, not saying I didn't do that. Shit, there's a workaround for that. There's a life hack. Folks, thank you so much. We'll be back tomorrow, and more shows coming up this week. So follow us and do all those things, and subscribe, and thank you so much. I'm Jason Mironchuck, and it's later than you think. I say,